Hey, thanks for pressing play on this episode of the Jock and Nerd Podcast. We got a special Halloween-themed episode loaded up for you, listener. Local comic book creator Scott Larson stops by in studio to talk about all the little haunted spots in Chicago. He gave me the goosebumps. And then we rounded out with our review of the season 7 premiere of The Walking Dead. One of the most anticipated episodes of all time, probably, maybe, I don't know. A bit of exaggeration? Sure, why not? Let's get to it. Happy Halloween, mofos.
It's the Jock and Nerd Podcast with your hosts, Anthony and Imran.
Jock and Nerd. Hello, friend. Thanks for joining the Jock and Nerd Podcast. Welcome. My name is Imran.
My name's Anthony.
He's the Jock.
And he's the nerd.
We've got a fun, special kind of our first themed seasonal episode, Anthony. This is going to be kind of a Halloween episode for the listener.
For all you Halloweeners out there, sons of bitches.
Oh, happy Halloween, mofos.
All of you on AMC and like sci-fi watching like horror marathons and
For
shit.
some people, Halloween every day of the year it is. You know?
Like you?
Yeah, I'm a freak of nature. I can't avoid it. What do you?
Where can I get me an Imran mask?
That's one of a kind. Although I should probably start selling those. Look, if you're a new listener, you never checked out the show before, what we usually do is we got a weekly show. It's a weekly Geek Fest where we cover comic book, TV, movie-related news. We talk about the TV shows, and we just have fun hanging out. But this one's a little different. We had a couple of things fall into place. Halloween is around the corner. So what you're going to hear in this show is a conversation with a buddy of ours, Scott Larson, who was on the show before. He's a local comic book creator, last heard on episode 73, and he's here to talk all things Chicago. He's going to talk a little bit about Chicago sports, a little bit about Chicago Comic-Con, early Chicago comic book stores, and then we get into haunted spots in Chicago. Ooh, very spooky. What you're not going to hear in this conversation is Anthony.
Oh, shit.
You want to explain why that is, Anthony?
I apologize to anyone that gives a fuck about my voice.
I don't think they do.
They don't probably care. But you know, it's October 24th, Monday. And as of this moment, the Cubs made it to the World Series, which is the first time since 1945. When Imran decided... Yeah, it is fantastic and jocktastic. When Imran decided to record the show, I gave him fair warning that he recorded the Scott Larson bit on Sunday, October 23rd.
The day after.
The day after the Cubs clinched. And he recorded it at a reasonable time, noon probably?
Yep, it was at noon.
Noon, which is a reasonable time for most. But I started drinking at 5:30 p.m. before the Cubs game and was just one continuous drinking episode until about 5 a.m. because the Cubs
do you even podcast?
Yeah, the Cubs ended up winning, and I was stress drinking throughout, and then celebratory drinking.
And then
after.
celebration drinking. So this is exciting for everyone in Chicago. Even like the whole city can feel it. We talk a little bit about it with Scott. You'll hear that in a second. But Anthony, real quick, I want to ask you that moment when the last out and it's finalized and the Cubs are going to the World Series for the first time in 71 years.
Yes.
What was going through your head?
I'll just say this is not even a city story. This is a national story.
Absolutely.
Everyone in the country is paying attention to this because it is the first time in 71 years, and it's the Cubs. It's the third largest market. Cubs have this affinity. They have a worldwide brand.
Absolutely.
What did that feel like? It happened fast, so I don't know if you're familiar with the term double play, Imran.
Oh, it ended on a double play, did it? That's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting, but there's no the batter came up. Chapman, who's the Cubs closer, walked the Dodger batter, so there's one out, man on first, and the next batter came up, Yasiel Puig, and first pitch, the guy swings at it, double play.
Oh,
so you don't even have time to kind of it's just like, holy shit, it's over.
It happened.
So it's like
happening.
It just happened. Like, oh my god, it's happening. Oh my god, it's over. My first reaction was I was in a packed bar in Wicker Park. My first reaction was obviously enthusiasm, but then I kind of covered my face. And I was like, oh my god, I think I'm gonna cry.
Oh.
So I ran out of the bar to have a moment to myself and called my dad, called my uncle, called my aunt.
Wow.
It's like, hey, we did it. All the older generation. So yeah, that was my first reaction. I was like, holy shit, I think I'm gonna cry. I got to run out of here. So,
Did you break any bottles on your way home?
did I break any bottles? No, I broke some Chinese food up in my stomach.
Okay, good for you. You are a responsible Cubs fan. 'Cause
No.
look, there's some of these Cubs fans have a reputation of just, smashing bottles and peeing on people's lawns. That's what you hear around here. But man, so needless to say, the next week is going to be quite a fucking week for you. So, and look, good luck. And you may not hear him on the next show, listener, but we'll get someone to fill it.
You won't hear me on the next show because we tentatively have that scheduled for Friday, October. Let's look at the date here.
It's going to be Game 3.
And that's Game 3 in Chicago.
Yeah. In Chicago.
The first
game
World Series game
Chicago.
in Chicago since 1945. So.
Wow. Yeah, no, there's no way in hell you're making the show. We'll get someone to fill in. Also, since this is the Halloween-themed episode, and we decided to add another segment at the end, the Season 7 premiere of The Walking Dead, very anticipated season premiere, just aired, and Anthony, I don't know about you, but I cannot wait for the weekly show to record my thoughts. I figure we might as well roll it into this one, and it's a nice Halloween-themed episode.
Yeah, so this is like a 2-part episode. It's with Scott Larson. So you have Scott Larson as a guest, and then you have me as a guest talking about Walking Dead, the premiere. So I'm glad to be a guest on my own show.
Thanks. I'm glad you could make it for this one. But yeah, let's get the conversation with Scott Larson. I just want to ask you, Anthony, have you ever heard of Resurrection Mary?
The cemetery?
Well, there's a cemetery, but it's also like the most famous spirit in the city.
Oh, no, I've never heard of it.
And I had not heard about this, but Scott fills us in. And
I'm ready to listen.
Yeah, it's very spooky. He gives me goosebumpies at one point. Let's get to it.
The Jock and Nerd Podcast.
Scott Larson, thank you so much for joining us inside the Jock and Nerd studio.
Oh, thanks for having me back.
Welcome back. It's been a while since I've had anyone in studio. As you noticed, Anthony is not here. He doesn't even come in anymore. We do everything over the internet.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, but the reason he's not here with us tonight or today is he's very hungover from celebrating the fact that the Chicago Cubs will be in the World Series for the first time in 71 years.
Oh, shit.
Scott, you're a Cubs fan?
I'm a Northsider.
You're a Northsider, so like everyone, you're born a Cubs fan, right?
Sure.
I mean, I'm the nerd. I don't really give a shit about sports, but even I understand the historicness we're about to experience in Chicago.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I can remember 1989 and certainly 2003.
89? How far did they get at 89?
They're in the playoffs.
Oh,
it was
shit.
either 88 or 89.
Okay. What did you do last night?
Well,
What was your experience? All I know is, look, I was watching the game. The game ended, and up here, I instantly heard things blowing up. And I'm hoping they were fireworks.
Yeah, we were in Lakeview yesterday. So
Okay.
we were at a bar called Vaughn's
Yes.
over on Sheffield.
Okay.
And my wife and I got there at 7:05, and we stood in line for an hour to get in. Or we stood outside to get in.
Wow. Even before the game started. Okay.
Well, the game actually started at 7:05, so we got there just as the game started, and then we hung out until like the middle of the third inning, I want to say.
Yeah. When was it getting like really buzzy and exciting where you were like, oh boy, this is it?
You know what? I actually thought there was another game.
Oh,
so
shit.
I thought that we were still like one more game away.
You didn't know this. You didn't think it was the clinch game. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, we're standing in line outside, and I'm like, let's go. I don't want to be here. Come on. It's Saturday night. I can't think of anything I want to do less than stand outside and see half of a TV from in a bar.
Yeah.
And
Wait, did you make it inside?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. If we hadn't, I would have, at one point, I would have been like, this is dumb.
I'm like, what am I doing? Okay. So the game's about to end. They're making it to the World Series. What happens where you were?
Oh, people went nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, people were really excited. It wasn't, nothing blew up in the bar.
Okay, good.
Sure. And, but people were really happy. People were really excited. And it was, I want to say it's like a measured excitement.
Yes.
I mean, it was happiness, definitely,
yes.
but it wasn't.
Let's not blow our load now.
Yeah, let's not kill somebody over this,
I mean, you got your usual reports of, people pissing in other people's yards everywhere and a couple of bottles being thrown, but it seemed to be pretty tempered. I was watching some of the cops. You could hear their thing, and they're like, "We've lost Anderson and Sheffield." They just like let him go. They climbed the bed. Yeah, you can't just let them vent it. Let them get it out. So.
Well, the thing is, the TV kept shooting back over to Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
And you could just see the mountain of people growing and growing and growing and growing.
This is going to be crazy this next week and a half. I'll tell you what, this is something people have been waiting a long time to see. So,
well, it's generations.
Yes,
it's like 5 generations.
Yes, like that's crazy. Like this is history in the making, and it's kind of cool that I'm going to watch it from the safety of inside my padlock department because I don't want to be out there. But Scott, how we know each other is also kind of a cool story, and it goes back to almost a year ago. October 2015, I find out Variety Comics, one of Chicago's longest-running comic books, just down the street.
It was the oldest one at that point.
41 years.
Right.
Is shutting down at the end of October 2015, and I was like, what?
Oh, shit.
And I kind of went over, recorded some audio. Episode 50 of the Jock and Nerd Podcast is a little tribute to, recording their memories and thoughts of the people who work there and the fans. And that's how I found your blog.
Right. I had written a blog. I used to go to Variety when I was a kid because I grew up in this neighborhood.
Yep.
And I went there, probably from the time I was 11 to maybe 17-ish. And then I kind of sprinkled in a couple times before I moved out of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And when I found out they were closing, I went over there to take a look. My wife and I had just moved back into the neighborhood after me being away for 20 years. So walking around through the neighborhood was, it was a trip as it was. But then walking past the comic shop, it was like, oh, I should go in there one day. I found out they were closing. I'm like, okay, I have to go in now.
You have to go, yeah.
So I started going in there, and the owner that I had known when I had originally gone there had passed away.
Yes, Rick.
Right. And it was run by 2 other guys. And so I went in there and I talked to them a little bit about my experiences being there. But the thing that I found was, they were younger, they were happy to be there, and they made the place a real pleasant place. I actually don't know what happened to them.
I follow them on Facebook. Mike Denler is always posting stuff. They seem to be doing, and Vin seems to be, enjoying his life.
I think he left the country, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he's been traveling. I saw a couple of Facebook posts. This neighborhood, for listener doesn't know, is we are in Lincoln Square, north side of Chicago. And so you also recognize this thing behind me.
Oh, sure.
Is one of the panels from outside the store, because one of the things I remembered is there was always comic book illustrations on the corner of the street. And I bought one of them right off the side of the building.
Now, how much do they charge you for it?
He gave me a good deal. It was like $150, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
Which for a little piece of history of the north side, I'm totally, and I love it as my background. Like, it'll always remind me of that. So after that show, you got in touch with us, and you're like, hey, I used to go here. I have a comic book. You're a comic book creator. A book called Visitations, which we'll get into at the end. But then we had you come in January.
Right.
And we talked about just your love for Chicago and how you were using Chicago history in your comic book Visitations. Mm-hmm. You want to tell the listener real quick what Visitations is about? Visitations
is the history of Chicago as seen through the eyes of the residents of the city's oldest cemetery.
Oh, spooky already.
Yeah, the funniest thing about that was when I came in here, I hadn't really done a whole lot of promotion at that point.
Right.
And now I've been going to convention after convention after convention, so it's real easy for me to spit this clumsy sentence out of my mouth.
You've worked on the pitch. You need your elevator pitch, and that's what the conventions will teach you. Like, somebody's walking by, I have literally 30 seconds to hook them into maybe they like this book.
I find different ways to bring people over to the table. And
I don't see you as like the aggressive pitch man, I got to be honest.
You know what? The thing is, the thing about conventions, which I've seen, is the fact that there's 1,000,001 independent artists there, 1,000,001 professional artists there, and everybody wants the customer's money.
Sure.
And with something like Wizard World, we just did Wizard World Chicago in August, I want to say. I went to C2E2, and that was the first one, right out of the box. And then I've done a bunch of small library ones. The small library ones are really interesting because they're like the old conventions used to be.
Yes.
When I was growing up, there was the Chicago Comic-Con, which turned into Wizard World later on.
Yes.
And the library conventions remind me of that a little bit, at a little bit of a smaller scale.
I imagine it's more intimate. You have more time to actually, talk to people.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Wizard World is charging people $60 to get in.
So at that point, what do you got left to spend on books?
Right, and that was the thing. This year, you know, I'm in Artist Alley, and people were kind of complaining a little bit about the setup and everything. And the thing with that show, I've been going since it was the Chicago Comic-Con in 1987, was when I first started going.
Wow.
I'm not quite sure how long it's been around, but since 1987, every year I've gone, it's been a different animal. And what I thought about this year was they were trying to figure out what they were doing. And they probably do that every year because every year is different. But I remember after Marvel and DC pulled out, there was a point where all the publishers started going to Wizard World. When C2E2 started in 2010, all the publishers pulled out. And so the next year, for that year, for Wizard World, because there were no publishers like DC, Marvel, Valiant,
I'm surprised they were able to continue. I didn't think it would last.
I walked in, and it was a bunch of Star Trek actors.
Oh, that's how they pivoted, huh?
And and it was really funny because I walk in, and like Captain Sisko from Deep Space Nine is there, and I went over, and he's like shaking my hand, and he's not letting it go.
Yeah.
And, and I'm going through a back issue box, and I turn around, and Data's looking at me. I'm like, don't look at me.
That's kind of, you know what?
It was creepy. It was like...
But I always remember that at Comic-Cons. It's kind of the Comic-Con staple go-to. If you can't get anyone, these Star Trek fuckers will line up you have multiple shows. They're all popular. They're not doing anything. They'll show up to all these. You will get somebody in the door.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and so this year, you know, they had the Back to the Future people there, which was really cool, but they'd had them in like a separate room. I think they had Carrie Fisher there, and she was in a separate room. And it was the first year that I was behind the table.
Yeah.
So it was a whole different experience for me, for sure. But then the other thing is, walking through the floor, I couldn't make heads or tails of what the floor was. I saw some comic books. I saw some clothing. I saw, you know, the Admiral Theater.
Bit of everything. What?
The Admiral Theater.
Hold on, listener. The Admiral Theater is on the north side of Chicago on Lawrence. It's a very weird location because it's in kind of like an ethnic residential community strip of Lawrence. But it is a alcohol-free... Is it all nude strip club?
Yes.
But you can't bring booze in.
Right.
Right? It's just like
But
juice.
you can walk in drunk.
But you can walk in shit-faced, absolutely. Sure. But I always drive by it, and I'm like, this is weird. There is just a strip club in the middle of this neighborhood that has like, you know, there's like produce markets and clothing stores, and then there's Admiral Theater. So they were at Wizard World?
Well, yeah, they had a little booth, and there's a couple things about that. So in 2010, when I was working on AC Comics Femforce, Len Straczewski had written a story about one of the characters named Stormy Tempest. She escaped from this maximum security prison, and she started working at a strip club in Las Vegas. And so he gives me the script, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, you know what? I could probably fake this, but I think I'm going to go over to the Admiral and talk to the people there and see what this is like. So I went in, and I had my sketchbook, and I'm sitting there. And the girls are coming up, and they're like, oh, what are you doing? And I told them, I said, look, I'm working on this comic book. I'm trying to do research, and, you know, there's a particular pole dance that he mentions in here. Is it real? And they're like, they sit down, they're like, oh, yeah. And what you need to do is go to YouTube and go to this channel, and I'll demonstrate it. This is how it works. And it's like really great. And then there were a couple of girls who were like telling me things they shouldn't have been telling me. And then there were other girls who came over to debunk them because I think people were worried that I was a cop or something.
Whoa.
And so it was really interesting. I got a lot of great information. The 2 pages of artwork that I did
Did they model for you?
No, they didn't, and they didn't need to. But they did have particular tattoos, which ended up in the book.
Oh, cool!
And it was little things like that. You know, a lot of them wear these wristbands, and that's where they like put money and stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that, and I wouldn't have known that had I not gone in there. And
little details.
Going in there, it just made a world of difference.
Best research ever.
Geek boner.
Well, you know, the thing was, you know, you have a bunch of they're basically teenage girls.
Wow.
And you know, they're over the age of 18, or they're supposed to be over the age of 18, or they're supposed to be over the age of 21. I don't know what the limit is, but you know, I'm sitting there and I'm pushing 40, and I'm like, this is kind of gross.
Yeah.
I can't really look at this.
Yeah.
This isn't really. I don't think this is sexy at all. It's just, you know, a bunch of teenage girls running around in their underwear.
Yeah.
So,
It's
so
all
as
living.
as far as that stuff was concerned, it was just it was a waste. So the Admiral Theater was at Wizard World, and I had always wanted to get them copies of the book.
Okay.
And so I go over, and it's a guy dressed as the Joker, the Suicide Squad Joker, with like the fake teeth.
Jared Leto Joker.
And then there are like a couple of girls there, and one of the girls I go over to talk to her, and she's like, "Oh, have you been to the Admiral lately?" And I'm like, "No, that's not really my thing." And she starts jumping up and down. She's like, "Oh, but you have to come. You have to come." I hold up my hand with the wedding ring on it, and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't do that anymore." And she's like, "Oh, congratulations." And that was like the end of the conversation.
She's like, moving on, next.
Right. But I'm like, "Listen, I want to get copies of this book over to you guys." And she's like, "Well, you have to talk to, this guy," and the guy dressed as the Joker. And the thing that was warped about that was he was a very nice guy.
Okay.
He was very nice to me. He was very nice to everyone who came up. But all these like young kids were coming up and having their pictures taken with him. And it was basically, there's this guy who's like a borderline pimp at a comic book convention.
But he looks like the Joker.
And he looks like the Joker, and all these like little girls are taking their pictures with him, and it's like there's something. I mean, it was all innocent, it was all nice.
The backgrounds
sweet,
must be really interesting when the parents get home and look at the backgrounds of the photos.
Yeah,
wait a minute.
It was just a little creepy. but he was having fun. They were having fun. So there's nothing wrong with that.
So look, there's always been a thing with Comic-Cons, and I'm just going to say it, slutty dressed up girls. It's always a thing. Those two go together.
A decade ago, this show used to have porn stars showing up to it too.
Oh yeah, they used to have Porn Row. Absolutely. Yes, I remember that. So
and I think they're gone now.
Yeah, there was always that weird crossover. Okay, anyways, we've sidetracked to why you're actually here. Going back to Variety Comic Books a little bit. Who bought the space now?
It was a lady named Suzanne. She didn't buy the space. She was offered the space by the
building?
By the building. And, unfortunately, the panels, the painted panels that were outside, because they took the ones like the one that you have in your studio. They took those down, and there was more underneath there.
Yes, there were ones that they couldn't be removed from the facade.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So the building decided you're getting windows whether you like it or not, and she wanted to keep the panels.
Oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah,
okay.
She really wanted to keep the panels, and as a matter of fact, she was looking to try to get people to do new panels for her. And she had an opening. And I walked in and I told her who I was, and she had read the blog thing as well. And so she wanted me to do like the first of the panels. I was like, oh yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to do that. And then I start getting these Facebook messages from her. They're tearing out the windows. I can't stop them.
Oh crap.
And so they she still has the panels.
They're inside.
And it wasn't just the panels that were done in like right before these new ones were done. Yeah. It wasn't just the last ones that Rick did before he passed away. There were more underneath
Yes, that's awesome.
So I think there were 5 layers originally. There was the ones from the 70s that I remember. That there was a picture of me with as a little kid next to.
With the old school like Batman and Robin and just those classic old Dick Sprang drawings.
Well, it was no. Before that, there was
another layer.
There was one Spider-Man and Captain America, and these were done in the 1970s.
Like the Kirby style. It was like the Ditko and Kirby style drawings. Yes,
kind of.
Yeah,
and then in like around 1984, Rick had put new ones up, and it was there was Superman and Spider-Man and Iron Man and maybe Wolverine or something like that. And then there was another layer that he put up, and then another one, and then he died, and then the layers that were the last ones were up there. So she didn't find the originals from the 70s, but she found a bunch of stuff going back.
Dude, how cool is that? Layers of artwork. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's geek history. So I got to tell you, I really kind of appreciate it. I've seen Facebook photos from Askina of these events they've put on. I really appreciate that she is kind of loving the space and trying to keep it lively and keep an energy in there.
Yeah, I think that she told me that she had gone into the store during their goodbye party or whatever it was on Halloween.
Yeah.
And I had gone in there as well. I think I bought the last things sold there.
Oh, wow, cool. I missed the last day.
Yeah, you know what? I
was there. That's when I bought it. I was there during the day.
Oh.
And not at the party in the evening. But the last day I went and bought this.
Yeah, we showed up after they closed.
Okay, yeah, that's when the party was. It was like a
Right.
after party.
Right, and he had, they had gotten like sandwiches from, I think they had like Jimmy John's sandwiches for people, or Potbelly, I think it was, and a couple other things. It was nice, it was their way of saying goodbye to everybody in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
and then the store sat, empty for a while. So Susanna's come in and she's really trying to work the space, and she's using it kind of as an event space, but she wants to sell old books, and it's kind of free forming. It's not really set in stone.
I find that interesting too, because I'm not sure. So on their website it says Esquina, a place to explore your creative powers, and there's
superpowers.
Creative superpowers. And I love that. I love that line. A place to explore your creative superpowers. And then there's a list of things like art openings, poetry readings, shared stories, workshops, travel talks, music listening room, discussion and galleries. It's almost like a performance space, a community space, a space for independent artists to maybe have stuff in there. Like, it's really cool. There's music. Like I've seen a lot. So you will be there this Saturday evening.
Yes.
On the Halloween weekend. Mm-hmm. And what is your presentation about?
Well, I'm going there. It's basically for the first anniversary of Variety's closing.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And what I'm doing is I'm doing the history of Variety for sure. But kind of like the history of Chicago comic book shops in Chicago.
That's awesome.
History of comic book shops in Chicago.
Yes.
And I'm also doing Chicago ghost stories. Now, what I plan on doing this week, and I hope I'll be able to do so, is there was a store over on Devon Avenue for a long time. It was actually the first store.
Oh boy, I
Chicago,
think I know what story you're
Larry's
talking.
Comics.
Yeah. Oh yes, waved east.
It was right over by Loyola.
Yes,
and he went out of business around 2001, 2002. And Larry's was a really interesting place, because what Larry's was he had like almost everything, and he had everything super cheap, and you could go in there and it looked like a bomb explosion.
All I remember is that was the place. There was literally just stacks of loose comics on the floor. No bags, no boards, just stacks of them that you could knock over if you weren't.
Which I did too. But the thing with that was Larry was incredible, because you could say, "Oh, do you have a copy of blah blah blah?" And he would like reach his hand into the stack
where it was
and pull it out without knocking anything over or anything. It was really, really impressive.
He was the first guy that everybody talks about.
He was the first guy in Chicago. He helped start the Chicago Comic-Con.
Oh, wow.
And it was him and like 3 other guys. So I'm going to be talking to him this week, because I'm really interested in a couple of things. And the first was what made him open the store in the first place.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering if it was the first store in the country of that nature.
Oh, wow. Possibly then, yeah.
And I also want to find out what year he started that convention, because I know San Diego had been around in the mid-'70s.
And that was also just like in somebody's basement, and a bunch of like, really just a couple of really small, intimate back issue vendors.
Right. And the thing that I heard about San Diego when it started, and you probably know this because you've got all the Star Wars movies up here, that was how they spread the word about Star Wars.
Oh.
And they basically took all this stuff to the San Diego Comic Convention, which was like 2 tables.
Right.
And told people, hey, this is coming, because 20th Century Fox didn't want to promote it because they thought it was a piece of crap and it was just going to fail.
Man, Lucas started that shit too, and as well as merchandising and toys, and like just setting the bar for blockbuster summer films and special effects. Like, wow, you don't forget how much Star Wars actually...
Oh my God, it was like
things.
It did, and I really, we talked about this the last time. I want to see something new too.
Well, that's why I'm excited for Rogue One. This finally, to me, is like the most. It's like different. It's a different look at the Star Wars universe. But it's not the same. Like, I mean, I liked Force Awakens, but let's be honest, it was like I saw it already, and it was called Star Wars: Empire Strikes Back: Return of the Jedi. Now, show me a new story from a slightly askew view of this universe with a different sheen, not your Star Wars sheen per se, but you have kind of like a war battle aspect with this movie with Gareth Edwards. I don't know. I think Rogue One's going to be exciting. And then the fact that Danny Glover just got cast as Lando Calrissian.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's awesome too. But look, so you're going to do ghost stories. That's why I wanted you to come in. It's a crisp October day. Halloween is right around the corner. I need you to give me some goosebumpies.
I don't know if I can do that, but
come
I
on.
can tell you some Chicago ghost stories.
All right, where should we start? Let's get
Well,
into it.
you know what? I've been giving presentations all over the place.
Excellent.
And it's kind of funny because I'm doing another podcast tomorrow, and I know that I have to make it different. The story's different from what I'm telling you.
Well, yeah, and you don't want to make it boring for yourself,
Well,
so
you know-
repeating the same shit over again.
Oh, that makes it easier for me. But I've listened to different podcasts where John Romita Jr. will talk about something. And It's like the same story over and over and over and over.
All right, so you put some thought into this. I like that you're bringing special, exclusive content.
Well, I didn't say I was going to bring exclusive content, but I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
Well, let me start like this. 2 weeks ago, I went to the Chicago Ghost Conference, which was held at the Willowbrook Ballroom.
I didn't even know there was a ghost conference.
Not only was there a ghost conference, most of the people who were there were ghost hunters.
Cool. Yeah, we had a paranormal investigator on.
Oh, who'd you have?
This guy, he has a show called Dead X Radio. His name is Jeff Hillier.
Okay.
And him and his buddies they go around and they investigate. They kind of have a show like ours where they're just hanging out and geeking out about what they're passionate about. And what they're passionate about is paranormal investigations and the machines and the devices and just the whole community. It was fascinating. I love it.
It's really interesting. You know, I walked in, I had the famous Chicago ghost hunter who's written a whole bunch of books is a lady named Ursula Białowski. And she's almost like famous as far as this stuff is concerned. If you do a Google search, you'll find her right away. And I had sent her a copy of Visitations #1 around March, and she shot me an email back. And she's like, "Oh, this is amazing! You know, I wanted to do something like this. Blah 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 blah. Can I get back to you?" And I'm like, "Yeah. You know, it's around Easter. I got things I'm doing right now. Can I get back to you?" Sure. And I never heard anything back. And a few weeks ago, I thought, well, you know what? I would really like to get in contact with her because I don't know if this is something that, you know, people she knows might like, or I could get some good background, you know, kind of like I did with the Admiral.
Yeah.
And so I contacted her again, and she's like, "Oh, I don't really remember the book." And I'm like, "Let me send it to you again." and she looked at it and she's like, "This is great. Do you have copies of this to sell?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, we've got this ghost convention going on. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." It's out over by over on Archer Avenue.
Oh.
Where Resurrection Cemetery is.
Okay,
and
south
it's like
side?
south
Yeah,
side. It's like past south side.
Wow.
It's like suburbs really.
Yeah.
And in fact, I had to get off the train at Lake Forest and take an Uber to the.
Oh, because the train didn't go all the way there.
No, the train didn't go all the way there.
That is far south in Cook County there, the Chicagoland area.
So, you know, I go into this thing. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work or what it's all about or anything like that. And the Willowbrook Ballroom is a really interesting place because it's very old, and it's been around for years and years and years and years and years. And they have had all kinds of different dances and stuff there. They have jazz night. They have this. They have that. And it's just been around forever. And so I go in there, and they had like tables for vendors that were around the ballroom itself, or the dance floor.
Right.
And there were people who gave presentations at the dance floor.
Okay.
So the vendors were really interesting. There was a lady there who had collected a number of different funeral photographs from like the Victorian era.
Oh.
So there's like these pictures of these deceased babies dressed in Victorian outfits and stuff like that. It was really, really, really interesting.
Oh, that's what you expect at a ghost conference, I suppose.
Yeah, and then there were a few ghost hunters who were selling books. One of them did this book called Ghosts of Maryland. And she's really interesting. She lives here in Chicago. Her name's Amelia Cotter. And she's going to write a little afterwards for Visitations #2.
Oh, nice.
And she's going to talk because she's originally from Maryland, but she's living in Chicago, and she does all this ghost tour stuff and things of that nature. She's just going to do the history of one of the places that's going to be in Visitations #2.
Okay, cool.
And then there was another guy named Scott Marcus, and he's out in L.A. He started in Chicago, and he's done a lot of like movie star ghosts. And and his stuff is really, really interesting as well. And so there's like all this background I'm gathering. Although I thought I was going to get background on ghost stories, which I didn't, but I got background on ghost hunters and how they work and the things they do. And, and then they're showing like little films where they're out there and they're asking questions and there's like nothing. And then they're recording and then they're listening later and later and over and over and over. And then you hear some voice in there. And it was really interesting.
Well, that's what I wanted to know with the Jeff Hillier is like, where is the evidence? What do you need to record? Is it in audio? Is it in electromagnetic fields? Is it in infrared light spectrum?
And what did he say?
He said a little bit of all of those. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of all of those. There's EVPs and there's, infrared cold. You'll see cold things and just the location of places and stuff. So, and there's tons of haunted Chicago books. I know there's tours. It's very popular. Like it's a great market for you to get into also with this.
Yeah, most of those are from Ursula Białowski too.
Oh, okay.
She's done all of those books. She's written probably about 90% of those books.
Right on.
And she's doing a tour.
So has this helped you craft your presentation as you've been going along?
Well, you know what? Again, I think that the ghost stories that I've found on my own.
Cool. Also, like nobody else has really reported on these specific.
No, the information is out there. The information is definitely on the internet, and it's out there, and she's involved in almost all of them. However, it's been up to me to go and find stuff. So one of the things with Chicago is there's a lot of history here. And there is a lot of history, as we had talked about the last time I was here, with the Chicago Fire and just how the city was built and a lot of the gangster stuff. And the thing that I find interesting is a lot of the ghost stories kind of like fall within that range as well. And one of the stories that I thought was really interesting that I never knew about was the Chicago Water Tower, which is one of the only buildings that survived the Chicago Fire. It's been there for
not the shopping mall, people. The one across the street from the shopping mall.
But the shopping mall as well.
Oh,
actually.
really?
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in a second. So the water tower, the legend is that when the fire was going through the city, the attendant for the water tower was like watching it, and he realized that, oh my God, I'm going to get killed because I'm here. I can't leave. And so he went up to the rafters or the high tower of the water tower and he hung himself.
Oh, crap.
And apparently even now people can see his body hanging there.
Oh, I never looked at the very top of the water. It's the only stone building. It was made out of stone and everything else surrounding it.
Right.
Which I don't know why they built everything out of wood. I guess it was just cheaper and easier.
Yeah, it was.
But wow, I didn't know that.
So there are police who will see a body hanging there, and they'll go running in.
Can you go up in there? Because I know they give tours on the inside.
Do.
Yeah.
Somebody can.
Wow, that's a good one.
I've never been in there at all. We were talking about the levee the last time I was here. The thing that's really interesting about that is right where the Wrigley Building is and the Tribune Tower and all of that. That used to be a red light district as well called the Sands.
Okay,
and this was probably in the early to mid 1800s.
Okay.
And it was the horrible, horrible place. I mean, it was 10 times worse than what the levee was. I'm not talking necessarily about the sexual encounters, but it was just, it was a bad, bad, bad place. And the city finally went in and just burnt the whole thing down.
Damn.
And what happened was all the thieves and criminals and prostitutes just like spread out throughout the rest of downtown. But that area was that. And then right where the Water Tower shopping mall is and right where the Drake Hotel is and all of that, that was a cemetery.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. My dad used to work at the Drake. I actually worked as a busboy at the Drake one summer after high school.
Yeah. Where was that in the Drake?
It was the Oak Terrace restaurant that was that when you're driving up Lakeshore Drive, you see those windows right there. It was right in that restaurant. Great view for dining, of course. But my dad, he was like room service manager or catering manager at the Drake for.
Did he ever see anything in the Drake?
I don't think so. I should have asked him. No, I don't think he did. It's cavernous, and the way the kitchens connect inside to everywhere is crazy. Like you can and there's a bunch of like hallways, and I remember being in the service areas. I never saw anything, but I could probably see it being haunted. You got any Drake stories?
Yeah, I do actually. Ooh. There are two infamous ghosts in the Drake Hotel. The first one is the woman in red, and she haunts the 8th floor.
Okay.
And what happened was on the day that the Drake Hotel opened, there was like some big party, and this woman was there with her boyfriend, and then she saw him with another woman. And so she was so despondent, she threw herself out the window and killed herself.
Oh.
And now there's no news reports of this.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the newspapers, but they think that one of the reasons why that is because it was brand new and they were like using their influence to not tell anybody that this had happened. But she apparently is still in the hotel.
Oh, wow.
And she walks up and down through the 8th floor.
Whoa.
And then on the 10th floor, there is a woman in black.
Okay.
And this story is a little screwier. What happened was, in 1944, somebody who was staying there walked into their room, and it was this lady and her daughter. And they walked into their room, and there was this woman who was dressed in black who was robbing the room.
Okay.
And she had a gun, and she shot the woman's mom in the head, and it took her a couple days to die, but she actually died.
Wow.
And the person who had done the shooting, who'd done the robbery, escaped. Nobody found out who that was. But the robber actually haunts the 10th floor of the Drake.
Huh. Wow.
So you have the woman in red and the woman in black.
And the robber is not the lady who died. It's not the lady who died that's haunting. It's the actual assailant.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It is.
I wonder if... would that mean that the assailant died in the hotel, possibly?
I don't know.
Well, the hotel was built in 1920, so you got
Right.
a lot of years of stuff to happen. Oh, I like those two. So people have seen both of these women.
Yes.
Oh, spooky.
And then you start to go north from there,
Yeah.
and you have Lincoln Park, which
Yeah.
used to be a cemetery as well.
Right. Well, after, like, a lot of it was cemetery, right? Before the Chicago fire.
Right.
And then they just kind of had to cover everything up or move them.
Right. Well, what happened was, it was during the fire, and I actually think that some of this moving started beforehand. I have a little bit of my recollection of this. Well, I don't recall it at all personally, but some of the story about this is a little mixed up in my mind. I haven't gotten it completely straight yet. I know there's a mausoleum there.
Yeah.
For sure. And it was a cemetery, and the city supposedly moved all the bodies over to like Graceland and Rose Hill and those cemeteries. But every once in a while, when somebody's excavating the thing, like a skeleton will pop up,
Crap.
and so there have been ghosts that have been seen there. I don't have anything specific for that, and actually, that's that's the spot that Amelia is going to be writing about. So I'm kind of like staying away from the stories there.
Yeah.
But then you go north of that, and you go over to Clark Street, and we have, the Al Capone era was very big here in the city.
Yeah.
And it's basically what the city is still known for. I mean, you would think that after all this time, especially with somebody being president who came from Chicago, that would kind of overshadow it. But Al Capone is still
Anywhere in the world, you ask people, if I say Chicago, what's the first thing you think of? They say Michael Jordan, Al Capone. Mm-hmm. Pretty much, or like gangsters and machine guns. Like I've been to Saudi Arabia and met people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Al Capone." I was like, "Yeah, that's wow. You still think of that, huh? Great."
Well, it's what we're known for.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because the city is embarrassed of it. They have been embarrassed of it. But what they really should do
turn it into like a whole amusement park or like a tourist attraction.
Well, I think part of that comes from the fact that organized crime is still around in the city.
Well, yeah, a little bit.
And they
don't want to give up their secrets.
Well, they don't want to give up their secrets, but their secrets are out there. But after the whole Capone thing, the organized crime families went underground, which is what they wanted all along.
Yeah.
He was like publicity seeking and couldn't stay out of the headlines. So they've still been around after all of these years. I think that there was a thing in 2007. It was the Family Secrets case, I believe it was called, and it kind of it broke the mob's back because somebody informed on them, and there was a lot there. But they're still there.
Yeah,
they are still there. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I think Mayor Emanuel made a deal with one of the garbage unions for O'Hare that was like mob back, so they're not going anywhere. They're there.
You kind of have to work with them a little bit at this point.
Right. Well, at one point in the 70s, when Jane Byrne was mayor, they had walked into her office and said, "You're going to do this, otherwise we're going to have a garbage strike, and you're not going to get anything done."
Waste management. The old waste management racket. All right, so what are some of your stories regarding the mob?
Well, you've heard of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Of course. Why maybe the listener hasn't.
Okay, well,
give us a little backstory.
Back in the 1920s, it's actually a really long story that involves basically a gang war between the north and the south side of Chicago, and the gangsters then aren't like the gangsters now. You know, they're two different things. The gangsters back then walked around in suits and fedoras and had Tommy guns. And the gangsters now are just kind of like thuggy kind of people.
Yeah.
But, Al Capone was the head of the South Side gang, and Bugs Moran was the head of the North Side gang. North Side gang was all Irish. The South Siders were Italian. And it's actually where a lot of the rivalry between the Cubs and the White Sox comes from.
I was just going to say, was it a gang between, really? White Sox? Because I heard recently that rivalry was just like White Sox fans were just jealous that the Cubs got everything and everyone loved them, and even they lost. There was more to that. Okay, go on.
Oh yeah, no,
awesome.
It's just it just sprang from the whole like North Side gang versus the South Side.
Wow. Okay.
You know, Capone and Moran didn't start out as the heads of these two different gangs, but they ended up there anyway. And Capone had decided he had had enough of Bugs Moran. He got information that Bugs Moran was going to be in a certain Chicago garage on Valentine's Day. So he sent people into the garage dressed as policemen. And all the neighbors saw these policemen enter this garage where Bugs Moran was with his gang. And then they heard a bunch of machine gun fire, and then they saw the policemen march out with a bunch of gangsters with their hands up. And then the people got into the police car and they drove away. And there was this barking dog there. And when the police actually went in there, and the first cop who was on duty then actually lived in this neighborhood.
Oh wow!
He lived over on Winnemac by Lincoln Avenue. He showed up there, and then they found out that they found all these bodies. And what had happened was the Capone gangsters walked in dressed as police officers. They lined everybody up against the wall. They brought in another gang with Tommy guns. The gang with the Tommy guns shot everybody against the wall.
Jeez.
And then everybody went back out and drove away.
Straight up execution.
Yeah, absolutely. And
this was February 14th, 1929.
Right. And it's infamous.
At 2122 North Clark Street
right.
location. Yes.
Right, and the building stayed there for years and years, and then it was torn down. The thing with Chicago is once the city becomes embarrassed about a place, they will just tear it down.
Sure.
It's like every building in the levee is gone.
Right. You don't want to remember any of that.
No. They just kind of like tried to wipe it away. And the building across the street from Holy Name Cathedral is gone too. There were a bunch of bullet holes in that building, which is a whole different story. And actually, if you look at Holy Name Cathedral, the bullet holes are there as well.
They're still there. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you can't really get rid of them.
Yeah. Could fill them in, I suppose.
It's kind of tough, and it's hard. You got to look for them, but they're there for sure.
That's cool.
And they tore the building down, and then somebody had compiled the wall that the guys had stood against, and they like rebuilt it in a bathroom or something like that. And then the bricks kind of went out to a bunch of different people. Now, the thing with the bricks is the bricks supposedly are all cursed. So people who own these bricks end up like dying or getting divorced or having all kind of horrible money problems. But the spot itself,
which is just like a grassy field now, right?
Now
with
it's just
trees.
now it's just a grassy
fence,
field.
I know.
Right, but the building that was there next door is still there.
Oh, the same building.
Oh yeah, the same building is still the same buildings are still there. It's just an empty lot now.
Okay, so what happens at this empty lot?
People walk by it and they can hear the sound of machine gun fire
Holy
and people
shit.
screaming.
Wow.
And but then the flip side of that is, according to a lot of stories, one of the victims of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre started haunting Al Capone. Like from that moment on.
Wow, instantly.
Up until the point Capone died. And I posted that on my Facebook page, and somebody was like, oh, wasn't he suffering from syphilis, which he was.
Yeah.
and it ate away at his mind. But I guess one of his bodyguards saw this thing too.
Holy crap! So there's a corroborated story.
But
Jeez.
but the flip side of that is Capone had a niece who has very recently written a book. And the book was like My Uncle Al Capone or something like that. And she claims in there that he was not in charge of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And then there was a book called Get Capone by Jonathan Eeg, I want to say is the way you say his name. And he also claimed in there that Capone was not in charge of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And so the question is, if he was not, why was he haunted by this ghost?
That's true. It's a good point.
Well, one of the paranormal researchers at the Chicago Ghost Conference had, I guess, interviewed these ghosts who, or this particular ghost who had been haunting Capone. And the answer that came back when he asked that was, I didn't know that at the time, that he wasn't responsible.
Oh. Meaning...
ghosts can make mistakes too.
Oh.
If you choose to believe that.
So it's possible the ghost just thinks he's responsible.
And then realized he wasn't and stopped after he died.
Oh, shit. I mean, it is also possible that one of his, captains would have just went ahead and did this and not told Al Capone. Mm-hmm. Or, he's probably told not to do this and went ahead and did it anyways.
Right.
But indirectly, it is kind of Capone. And that's not the only death on his hands by any means.
Oh, no, absolutely not. He was a murderer.
It's like if the ghost sees this energy there.
Mm-hmm.
That's
guess.
creepy. Yeah, that's creepy. Well, that's cool. All right, what else you got? Where else can we go from there?
So, one of the things that I've done with Visitations is a lot of the characters in Visitations are based on different monuments in different cemeteries.
In the cemeteries, yes.
Right. And, I started with Graceland, and there are some from Rose Hill. And so, one of the things that I found with the book and the people who really like the book is I have a bunch of morticians that like the book, and I have the ghost hunters who like the book. So, I guess that's my audience.
At least you know your audience.
It's kind of fun.
Know.
It's interesting. It's really interesting. There are people who I wouldn't necessarily think.
Yeah.
But you go over to Graceland Cemetery, and clearly that place has a lot of different stories because all the founding fathers of the city are buried there. And one of the characters that, or one of the phantoms that I based my character on, there were two. One of them was the Eternal Silence statue, which looks like the Spectre from DC Comics.
Okay, right, yeah.
And the story with that is that if you look into his face, you see a vision of your own death. I don't know. I wasn't brave.
Have you looked in his face? You didn't look.
No.
I'm just gonna look away.
No, but at his feet, people throw coins and stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like he's the ferryman. Do you know that story?
No.
So in the ancient Greeks believed that once you die...
Oh, the guy who drove the boat across
Right.
the river Styx to Hades. Yes,
Right.
yes. Look, I can't get myself to look in the mirror and say Candyman 5 times. I refuse to do that.
Okay.
Just in case the dude shows up because he's scary. Mm-hmm. So I get it.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I think that people throwing money down at the feet.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things about that also is yesterday I had to go over to the Loyola neighborhood for something, and I decided I was going to walk. And so I decided to cut through Rose Hill Cemetery, which is right over here.
Yeah.
And I grew up right by Rose Hill Cemetery.
Yeah, me too. I've seen that my whole life.
And it's an interesting place. I thought I'd cut through. And they've got this little girl statue. I forget what the girl's name is. It's like Lillian Fellows or something like that. And she's encased in this glass thing. And I saw her from afar, and I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to go over and take a look. And I get there, and this glass case has a bunch of flowers all over it. And somebody had taken dollar bills and stuffed them through this little vent.
Huh.
So there's all this money at her feet.
Wow.
And it was really intense. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, well, why would What is that for?
I guess it's for good luck.
Huh.
And that particular statue is also supposed to be haunted. There is a smell of roses that surround it, even during the winter.
And there's no plants anywhere.
And there's no plant anywhere, right?
Okay,
right. But Graceland has a little girl statue as well, and that one is Inez Clark, and it was this girl who died when she was 7 years old. And the first time I saw it, I was like, "That's super creepy." And she's actually the phantom that my group will be dealing with in issue 3 of Visitations.
Cool.
And she's really, really interested. The sculpture itself is really interesting. It's kind of creepy. But she apparently disappears from her case all the time, especially during rainstorms.
But the statue's just gone.
The statue is gone. People have seen a little girl frolicking around the cemetery in a Victorian outfit.
Oh boy!
And it's it's really interesting. I mean, you take a look at the statue, and it's like, how could this not be haunted? It's just one of those things where you see it, and it's just like, okay, that's super creepy.
Somebody needs to set up one of them cameras there and just record a week and see what happens.
Well, the interesting thing was when I was at the Ghost Conference, someone came up, and I was, I'm showing them the book, and they're looking at. And they said that they were friends with the security guard who went through the case and found it empty.
Oh, jeez.
So, firsthand
Dude,
stuff
if I was that security guard, I'd be like, nope, I'm out of here. I quit. I'm going to work at McDonald's. That's cool. See you later.
Well, there is somebody over at Rose Hill who did that, who quit.
Because of haunting. Holy shit.
Yeah. This was actually in like 1995. There was a groundskeeper who was there, and he saw this woman over by the gate. It was after closing hours, and when he approached her, she like disappeared, and so he like freaked out, and I think he quit. If he didn't, there was somebody who did, but because I don't want to be like telling the story and having something you're like, no, that's not what happened. But there is someone who quit, but he went into the main office and he complained a lot, and he's like, hey, this happened, and I think he did quit. But the thing was, they got a phone call from somebody that day, and it was this lady who said her aunt visited her in a dream, was very upset because she was not properly buried. She didn't have a grave headstone.
Oh, shit.
And so once she ordered the headstone, it was put in the place right where the guard had seen the ghost.
Oh, wow. That was her grandmother. Oh, yeah. How do you explain that stuff? I don't know.
I don't. I don't even try.
What else have you found in the cemetery? Have you seen anything?
I've seen nothing.
Really? Okay.
It's the closest I've ever gotten to things happening is right outside Rose Hill. I used to when I lived over by Loyola, I would jog from Loyola over to my old house and circle around and go back. And so I'd always go down Ravenswood by Rose Hill and kind of jog down that street. And there were times I would fall. Same place every single time.
Huh.
But that happened a bunch of times.
And there was no misplaced piece of sidewalk or uneven.
There is some misplaced sidewalk there.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. There just is.
Yeah.
It's cracked. But going to and fro, it seemed a little strange. But then I was running over there trying to avoid the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And a bee flew in my eye. I'm serious. I was just like, oh my God, I'm blind now.
Oh, no.
And then there was once where this little kid came running up to me with his fist clenched and he started swinging at me.
So, but this is all in the same
same street, in the same
kind of area.
It's like a 2-block area or something like that.
Something weird's going on there.
Yeah, I thought so. And there's a restaurant there called the Fireside.
Yes.
That's supposedly haunted.
Oh, it is? We used to go there all the time. They have a great Bloody Mary bar on Sundays. Fun place. That's probably been there for a while.
Well, it's right across the street from that cemetery.
That's true, yeah, and the tracks and stuff. All right, what's one of the more convincing stories that you've heard of all the hauntings, Chicago's haunting history?
Well, one of the things that, and I tell this story to everybody who foolishly comes up to my table when I'm at a convention. I usually start with, oh, hey, let me tell you about Chicago, blah, blah, blah. Have you ever heard of Graceland Cemetery?
Yeah.
I was at C2E2, and there was a crew person who was there. And she's walking by the table, and she kind of like lingers and looks. I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of Graceland Cemetery? She goes, yeah, I used to go in there all the time. Well, I used to break in there with my friends all the time and get drunk. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. How do you get in there? Because Graceland is surrounded by a gigantic stone wall. And then she's like, oh, it's real easy, blah, 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 blah. And I said to her, did you ever see anything when you were in there? And she said, nah. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Did you ever see anything when you were in there? And she said, well, we were drunk. And I said, well, what did you see? And she said, oh, we saw a guy in an old newsboy cap. And I'm like, all right. I said, did your friends see this thing? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, alcohol doesn't really work that way. I said, have you ever heard of Rose Hill Cemetery? And she goes, oh, yeah, I used to break in there all the time and get drunk too. And the thing with Rose Hill is it's ridiculously easy to break into. I mean, it's easier now than it ever was.
Wow.
It was always easy. So I don't mind broadcasting this because I really want them to change it.
How do you get in? Let me know. How do you get in?
Oh, it's really easy.
Where's the spot?
So there is Balmoral,
Right.
which is a diagonal street. And the cemetery used to basically go to Berwyn Avenue and Balmoral. But they gave the city took part of it back or something like that. I guess there was some kind of lease on it. So the cemetery has given away parts of their cemetery back to the city.
Okay.
And so it ends at a different place now. And there was this little park that's useless and stupid. And so you have this gigantic stone wall. And then you have this fence that's maybe 6 foot high.
Well, that's more like 3 feet high.
Maybe it's 3 feet high. Yeah, it's not as tall as I am.
Yeah.
So it's maybe 4 to 5.
Okay.
And it's and right in between there, in between the stone wall and this ridiculous fence that a 4-year-old child could jump, there's a spot that's about this wide.
It's not a gap.
There's a gap. And as a matter of fact, yesterday when I cut through the cemetery, I crawled through the gap.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't crawl because I was standing, but I was able to shimmy my body into it.
You can slip right through there.
Yeah. So it's open 24 hours a day. And in fact, last year there was a clown that
those clowns are still terrorizing. Yeah.
Well, there's someone dressed up as Batman now who's
stopping the clowns, which I think is great.
Yeah, it's clearly we've won.
Those clowns are going to get stabbed and shot if they don't fucking cut their shit out because nobody's playing with scary clowns.
It's really I don't know what to say about it.
They're asking for a stabbing, that's all, or at least a punch to the face.
Well, that there's a clown cemetery.
What?
There's a clown cemetery. I guess it's here in Illinois, and there was the circus train crash in the early 1900s.
Oh no!
And so there's so all the clowns that died are buried in the cemetery, and there's these headstones, and there's Zippy and all kinds of other names.
Wow, that is bizarre. I bet there's some clown hauntings going on.
Oh, there's
there.
Got to be
clown cemetery. All right, wow, that's a good one.
So
you can sneak into Rose Hill, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
Go check it out. Say hi to some of these spirits.
Yeah, no, you go ahead and break in and then go over to the main office and say, hey, I just walked in.
Yeah.
It's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And I hate to see that open because, my great-grandfather is buried there. It was someplace that I knew growing up. And it's just, it's ridiculousness. I mean, if you're going to do that, just get rid of the wall. But
or just put a thing up. It wouldn't take much.
Yeah. Well, so and I think every cemetery is like that. Actually, a mortician friend of mine who was in LA said that she thought that it was like that in case somebody locks themselves in.
Oh, I see. So there's always
which would make sense. So anyway, I had asked this person, the C2E2 person, if she had ever heard of Rose Hill Cemetery. She said that she had broken in there as well. And I had a friend of mine about a year ago. We were driving by Rose Hill, and he's like, oh, yeah, I was in that cemetery with my sister. There was somebody who I knew who was buried there. And I said, oh, yeah? And he goes, yeah, something really weird happened in there. It was during the day. We were visiting this grave, and there was a woman in Victorian clothes, or he said old-time, turn-of-the-century clothes, with an old-time baby carriage.
Whoa.
And these black clothes with this baby carriage, this old baby carriage. And, it's somebody I know, so I wasn't just going to dismiss the person. And so when I was talking to the C2E2 person and she said she broke into Rose Hill, I said to her, did you ever see the woman in the Victorian clothes and the baby carriage? And she said, yes, we did.
Oh, shit.
And so that's 2 different stories.
Yes, you were able to name the exact thing she saw. Wow.
But the fun part about that, I have not asked Ursula about this. The thing about that is I looked online and I can't find that particular spirit anywhere online.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of my information has come from, just because it's like right there. It's real easy to find.
It's an undocumented spirit that made it over the wall, people. Donald Trump will be very upset. We need to build a wall to keep the ghosts out.
Well, the walls are there.
The wall is there.
There's just gaps in the middle of it.
But this could be something that you now can add to, like, you document this woman.
You said somebody else told me the same thing.
Now it's yours. It's like naming stars or discovering a comet. But this is the Scott Larson ghost. I figured out who she is.
But
that's
it
cool.
might not be mine. Just because it's not on the internet doesn't mean that somebody else.
No, but that's why you got to get on there first. Put it in some it in some bits there, and now it's yours. But this is neat. It's like researching paintings you find, trying to figure out the provenance, who the painter is. You can kind of like research these spirits and be like, okay, let's think about who this could be.
Well, there is a little bit of that. When I started Visitations, I decided that it was just going to be, fictional completely. But then, you're going along and you start to hear these stories, and it's like, well, how can this not be in the book?
Yeah.
How can this not be in the book? And, we're at the Willowbrook Ballroom. That is such a hard name to say. And that's a famous place for a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
And one of the things was that's where Resurrection Mary had her last dance.
I am not familiar. I like the name already.
Oh, you don't know Resurrection Mary?
No, I don't know Resurrection Mary. Hit us with it.
All right, so I think the first reported sighting was of somebody who was actually at the Willowbrook Ballroom, and he was there was this lovely blonde woman he was dancing with. It was like 1935-ish, something along those lines, and she was very cold to the touch.
Okay.
And after the dance, he asked if he could drive her home. She said yes. And so she's in his car, and he's like, well, what's your address? Where do you live? And she said, well, just take me home. Go down Archer Avenue. Take me home. And they go past Resurrection Cemetery, and she's gone.
Oh, what?
She's not in the car.
She's not in the car anymore.
She's not in the car anymore.
Oh, crap.
And so she apparently had told him her name. He was able to track down her address, went over to her parents' house, and her parents were like, that was our daughter died 7 years ago. Why are you here? Get lost.
Oh, my God.
So she's known as Resurrection Mary, and there's two different people who they think it might be. And there's like photographs of them and everything. One of the ladies' name is Anna Norcus, and the other one was like Mary Beverny or something like that. And it was they're both young women who were killed in a car crash like around the same time. And so Resurrection Mary is really Chicago's most famous ghost. She has been seen numerous times.
Oh.
There's a bunch of different newspaper articles about her.
Oh, wow.
And what happens is somebody usually sees her by the side of the road, picks her up. Same story every single time. I just want to go home. They drive past Resurrection Cemetery. Poof, she's gone.
Oh, shit.
And there was one person who picked her up and was engaging her in conversation, said, hey, you look kind of like Resurrection Mary. And she's just like, oh, just take me home. Just take me home. Just take me home. So,
okay, this one gave me goosebumps finally. I'll tell you that much.
Finally?
Yes.
Sorry.
Look, you're trying. I understand.
I don't know if I'm really trying or not. I'm just telling you what I know.
Well, this one is spooky.
So, but the other part about that is there are people who have seen Resurrection Mary inside the cemetery holding the bars of the cemetery. And the bars are like all melted and twisted where her hands are. And the cemetery has removed these bars and put new ones in several times. And they keep going back to the way they were. If you look up online,
what?
It's
The bars are
you
physically
can see pictures
changing.
of the bars.
Hold on. What the fuck?
Oh, you can see right there.
Wait a minute. They keep getting bent. This. Yeah. So they will replace it and then it'll get bent again like this.
Yeah.
What the shit? Wow. And these are iron bars.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's discolored like it's...
Yeah, and there's fingerprints in there too.
What the shit? And it's not some strong guy. This other guy is like putting his hand, you see where it kind of...
Right.
It would fit fit her handprints.
Right.
Are those her handprints? This is spooky. I did not know about this.
Really? How could you have lived in
I don't
Chicago
know.
and never heard this story?
I've never heard of Resurrection Mary. There may have been, were there like little kids things where you, was there a
No,
chant
that's
about-
Bloody Mary.
That's Bloody Mary. Okay, I was thinking something.
Yeah,
No.
so that picture right
That's
there is
her.
Anna Norkus. That's a
One
possibility
of
to
them.
be. And then the other one down there, that could be her as well.
The headlines are like, girl is killed, 5
Right.
hurt as auto falls in ditch. Girl killed in crash. Whoa, spooky. Ooh, I like that one. That's a good one.
See, the nice thing about telling you that is you've never heard it before. It's an old story. It's
I'm
been around
surprised I
for a
never.
long-
I'm surprised. Look, there's a lot of things
Well-
I've never heard before.
The when I was at Wizard World and I was talking to people, I was telling them, I told them the Rose Hill story and all that, and I mentioned Resurrection Mary. I don't even know why I did, but I did. And she started to become like part of my like, oh, hey, well, this is Chicago's most famous ghost, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And this group of teenagers had come by and they stopped and they're listening to me yak. And one of them said to me, my mom saw Resurrection Mary. I'm like, oh, really? But then the other thing is teenagers will like dress up in like glowy like stuff and like
Oh.
walk over there.
So
to,
it might
try
be
to scoop-
fake
Well,
sightings.
I think there have absolutely been some
become a
fake
thing.
sightings, but not all of them are fake sightings because obviously there's photos, there's the bars, there's all of this stuff.
This is a pretty big legend. All right, so you gave us the most popular one. How about a really obscure one?
Well, there's the Ford Oriental Theater.
The Ford Oriental Theater? The Oriental Theater downtown.
Right.
Okay, I don't know about this one.
And it was the Iroquois Theater.
It used to be?
Yeah, the Iroquois
Theater.
Theater was the first fireproof building in Chicago
Okay.
that burnt down.
How did it burn down if it was
For the
fireproof?
same reason the Titanic sank and was unsinkable.
The first, okay, I see. Sometimes that shit happens.
Right. And so 602 people died.
Wow.
And they were, because it was fireproof, there was no fire escapes outside. So some people like climbed out the windows thinking they were going to climb down the fire escape and fell to their death.
Oh, shit.
And a bunch of bodies were laid in the alley behind the building.
Yeah.
And so reportedly people can hear people, in the new theater, the new quotes theater, people can hear screams in the theater.
Yikes.
People have seen phantoms walking down that alley. That alley is known as like the Alley of Death or something.
Oh, shit.
And it's right in downtown Chicago.
Yes, it's right in the
It's
middle
right-
of the loop. It's very
Right. It used to
very
be next to Borders when
Yeah.
Borders was there.
very busy area.
Mm-hmm.
And the Oriental Theater is still, it's still there. There's a lot of great plays and big plays coming through there. Wow.
So have you ever heard of anything called ghost lights?
Ghost Lights?
Yeah.
No.
I had never heard of them before going to the
Conference.
conference, but they're apparently somewhat common.
Okay, what are they?
And well, they're like glowing orbs, and these orbs will appear in places that have a lot of phenomenon. So one of the places is Archer Avenue. So Archer Avenue, where Resurrection Cemetery is, and where the Willowbrook Ballroom
Yeah.
and Resurrection Mary are, that's not the only thing that happens there. Apparently, there is a phantom hearse with like galloping ghosts that goes into the cemetery, and there is a body of a dead child or a coffin of a dead child that is being ushered in by the hearse.
Like a car hearse or like with horses?
Horses.
Oh, shit.
Horses, and people can hear galloping and stuff like that. So there was another ballroom over there, and it was called the Kaiser Ballroom or the Kaiser Hall, and it was a dance hall. And somewhere around the turn of the century, there was this dance going on there, and there was this guy there, and this woman started dancing with her. He was like a handsome stranger kind of guy, and they're dancing, and she looks down and she screams.
Ooh.
And, there are a bunch of people. She, like, moves away from him. All these people surround this guy, and he's, like, over by the window, and he, like, jumps out the window.
Oh.
And they follow him down the stairs. They go running out, and they look down on the ground, and they see a hoof print. And so, yeah, it's So the story is that the devil came to Chicago to have a dance in the pale moonlight.
Oh, like that line from the Batman movie. No way.
Right.
You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
That's right. So the thing about that, so I read this story and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And so I contact Ursula Bielski and I'm like, hey, was this the Willowbrook? And it just changed its name. And she wrote me back. She's like, no. She goes, but it's connected to the legend is part of the Devil Baby legend of Hull House.
Oh, Jane Addams' Hull House.
Yes.
Huh.
So, and I was like, oh, really? Oh, my God. I didn't know that.
Devil Baby. That's awesome.
Do you know of the...
No. Let's
well,
get that
I
one.
don't know a whole lot about it, but...
Jane Addams' Hull House. First, explain what that is.
Jane Addams was this lady who started this home in Chicago,
Yes.
and it was kind of like this home for wayward women.
Yep.
It was like she was trying to rebuild the lives of people who were divorced, people who had been prostitutes, people who had been like...
Your first kind of like battered women's shelter.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's been around for a long time.
And it's a museum now.
Yeah.
And so supposedly there was a baby born there, and it was like a devil baby, and they kept it in the attic.
Oh, shit.
And the movie Rosemary's Baby was based on that.
Oh, okay.
So I actually,
Wow.
I haven't done that much research on that yet. I was planning to, because once I do visitation, the second series of visitations, I was going to have that featured in there.
Okay, cool.
And this just kind of adds to it. Now, the disappointing part about the devil dancing in the pale moonlight story is that is not the only story like that out there. There was a story that was from like Kentucky that was out there that was like that, or Tennessee, and so that story is kind of like
may not be unique to the place, but to the region. But it could be one of those things that
where he
played
appears
telephone
every once in a while.
And yeah.
Well, no.
Oh, maybe he does this. He's
Maybe
making the
he does.
rounds. I see what you're saying.
He's making the rounds.
This has been great, dude. Great stories. I love that you're pulling this stuff into visitations and combining it. So why don't you tell the listener a little bit about visitations and where they can check it out, where they can buy it. I understand you're on issue 2 and you're going to be running another Indiegogo campaign, or it's running now?
No. Okay, so I did the Indiegogo campaign for issue 1.
Okay.
And I only wanted to do it for issue 1. And the reason why is I think that stuff is overdone. I think it's not fair to push it on people. I know that there are a lot of people who do. And I think that I was really lucky. When I was here, I hadn't even started it yet.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky because I did exceed the goal. But me exceeding the goal was me sending a lot of emails out to people and bothering people and saying, hey, help. And so there were some people who kind of floated. And actually, one of the fun stories about that was one of the prizes was you get to be the ultimate villain in the book.
Yeah. You drew in a lot of people into your book, a lot of your backers, right?
And and I am doing that. And I ran a contest at Wizard World, and 5 people won. And it was actually, this was really funny. Wizard World, there were a ton of people dressed as Harley Quinn.
Yeah, of course.
And for a movie which has been dissed as much as it has, it sure has made a ton of money, and a whole bunch of people want to be that character.
Yeah,
it's done extremely well.
Look, you put Will Smith, Margot Robbie, you're going to get everyone to go see a movie.
I guess.
And
yeah, but they're seeing it over and over and over.
Yes,
and that's the thing. I saw it twice.
I've seen it twice. And then there's going to be an extended cut now, so there'll be more.
Yeah, that's kind of bogus. Yeah. I wish they weren't doing that.
That's just how they do things these days.
Yeah, I do. I was one of the only people who liked the Batman Superman movie.
See?
I thought it was fine.
Well, you would. You're not the only one. I know a couple other people.
Okay. Did Anthony like it?
It's very... No. I probably liked it the most out of all of us. Okay. But look, Zack Snyder makes awesome, divisive movies. It gets people talking at the very least. Mm-hmm. You could say that much about the guy.
So I was doing the Indiegogo campaign, and I had the prize for like $500. You can be the villain, and somebody bought it. I was just like, some stranger bought it.
Wow.
So I'm not saying more than that because the person who bought it is going to be the ultimate villain.
So you don't want to spoil it.
Right, so I can't tell who it is or why or anything. Actually, you could probably find out just by going looking. But that was a lot of fun. That was really interesting. So since I exceeded the goal, there's this thing on Indiegogo where you can keep it live forever.
Yeah.
so people can still buy the book from there.
Yes, that's great.
And so I'm running it a little bit as a store now.
No, and that's fine because we've talked to a bunch of cats from the UK last month who have kickstarted all their volumes. And from talking to them, I've realized that Kickstarter has kind of become a place where people go to shop for comic books.
To a certain extent.
You know? So you need a presence there because your kind of audience, people who read independent comic books, are scouring Kickstarters and Indiegogo's looking for some new stuff.
Sure. And the other thing is, too, I have books over in Chicago Comics,
in
Lakeview, and I have books over at Graham Crackers downtown.
Right on.
And
thanks for putting our ad in there, by the way. I want to thank you that personally now, face to face. I love
it was fun.
That somebody may stumble across that and be like, what is this nonsense? Let me check it out. Great. Love it.
And Third Coast Comics had copies as well. But the thing is, I can do better taking these things out to conventions and to ghost conventions and everything else. And the copies at Graham Crackers they've been there since March. They're still sitting there. And the thing is, there's so much competition for anyone who walks into a shop like that. And I know that I was trying to get it up on the Amazon thing.
Yeah.
And they're giving me crap left and right. They're, I keep getting these emails. You can't actually talk to somebody, but I'm getting these emails saying, "Oh, well, the resolution isn't big enough." It's like I did these 11 by 17 at 600 dpi.
Yeah.
How can the resolution not? And finally, I've redone them like 5 or 6 times, and I'm like, I'm done. I can't talk to anybody there because there's like no human.
So you're trying to get it on the Comicsology network.
I was planning to, but now I think I'm just going to give up on it.
That's unfortunate because that is another great outlet.
Sure.
It's unfortunate that the experience has not been the best.
It's been really it's been aggravating because not only do they make you wait for like 5 months before they consider putting it on, but then it's like, oh well, there are these production problems with this, and you can't talk to a human being and find out exactly how to fix this problem.
Well, look, some of our listeners are independent comic book creators. They may have an in, they may have some advice that maybe they'll reach out to you.
But they're more than welcome
and hook you up. So Visitations 2, when's that coming out?
The hope was it was going to be out by the end of this week, but I'm only about halfway done with it. It's ended up being a bigger animal than I had originally intended. And to a certain degree, I'm George Lucasing it, where it's like I'll be going along and then I'll be like, oh, hey, this would actually be pretty cool to have in here. And then I go and change it. And so that's been part of it. And then I've had a lot of stuff happening in my personal life as well, which has gotten in the way a little bit. So I'm aiming for the beginning of the year. What I really want for these things is for them to come out around Halloween.
Sure.
So we'll see if I can do that with issue 3 for next year. But it's looking like it's taking about a year each for these, which is kind of sad, actually.
But look, you're there's a lot of research. You're learning a lot. It's evolving. Did you ever think you would be friends with so many morticians when you started this fucking thing?
It's really interesting. It's really, really interesting.
That's the best part.
The first issue is still free for anyone who wants it.
Oh, excellent. All right, I'll put a link in our show notes to this episode. So they can check it out.
Yeah, and I still get emails floating in here and there saying, hey, I'd like an issue. What I found is, the experiences at the conventions are different every time. And some people are like, oh, yeah, the issue's free, but I want to buy a copy. And it's like, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Once issue 2 comes out, which, should be ready before C2E2 next year, it'll be that much better because I'll have both there.
Right on, yeah.
And the thing with issue 2, which is going to be special, is it is it's the Great Balloon Disaster, and so it's a story about this balloon race, and we talked about that the last time. But the book will be turned with every page that is turned. So it's a reader interactive experience. You see a double page spread on one page, you get to the next page, you got to move it. And you get to the page after that, you got to move that.
Oh,
and
fun.
While the balloons are popping and things are happening, the book is spinning in the reader's hands.
Whoa.
So
wait, is this? Oh, so you physically have to turn?
Oh, yeah.
You know what? Jeff Lemire did a series called Trillium last year, and it did something. He's great with this. He does something similar where the front half of this book, it was like a time travel piece. The front half, it's about this guy from 1940 finding this temple in the rainforest. The back half you had to flip over and read the other way, but it was about this girl in the future, and they've also found this temple.
Oh, interesting.
And so it kind of crosses the last issue. You have a one storyline going across one way and the girl storyline upside down in the book. And at one point, it makes you turn the page. The panels kind of come together.
Oh,
they twist, and you're turning the book, and then you're flipping and you're turning. And it was just a really fun experience. And it made a lot of sense with the timeline meshing, you know. So look, for the listener, where do you want them to do? Where can they find all your stuff? Where can they say hi?
Well, I can certainly be reached at visitationscomicbook@gmail.com. There is a website, which is visitationscomicbook.com. I do have a newsletter I'm shooting out to people, and you've gotten it. What do you think of the newsletter?
Yeah, I like it. Good stuff.
So that's
keeps you up to date on all the stuff like that. That's how I do. You're doing all these ghost presentations, and listener, if you're in the Chicagoland area and you'll love this ghost stuff, go check out Scott's ghost presentation. I don't know, what do you call them? Ghost lecture, Haunted Chicago lecture.
Yeah, you know what? I don't want to quite use the Haunted Chicago because I know that's what other people are using. So I don't know if there's like a copyright on that or not.
What would you call it? Because I'm going to name this episode
Chicago's Haunted History
with Scott Larson.
Yes.
That's going to be the title of this episode. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. So those websites, also listener, check out episode 50 of the Jock and Nerd Podcast about variety. Check out episode 73, which is the first time Scott was on. He talks all about visitations and more of this fun stuff and I'm hanging out in cemeteries, you vagabond.
I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Google Plus. I'm on Instagram.
People still use the Google Plus?
I don't know, but it gets me up on the Google thing. So that's.
I'll put all these links in the show notes so people can check you out. Scott, man, thanks for bringing a little Halloween spirit to the show. It's perfect. I love getting scared, and you're always welcome.
Oh, thank you so much.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hey, listen, isn't this fucking shit awesome? Would it be great if someone actually, liked it enough to actually maybe support us? How about that, Imran? Did you ever think about that for 1 second?
Well, look, listener, if you like what you're hearing so far, we do have a way for you to support us.
And how the fuck do they do that?
Go on to jockandnerd.com/Patreon, or you can go on to patreon.com/jockandnerd, which is our virtual tip jar.
It works both ways. Listener, support us for any amount. You're going to get access to awesome bonus content. Ruggs has got mini episodes, instant reactions to movies, more geeky audio than you can shake a geek stick at.
Or a geek's dick at.
Oh, boy.
Oh, shit.
So go on to patreon.com/jockandnerd and donate today.
Hey everyone, if you're into creepy with attitude, you've got to check out the DXR, Dead X Radio, right here, Saturdays from 4 to 7. Right, guys?
Yeah. We're going to talk to you about everything from ghosts to aliens to Bigfoot to conspiracy theories.
Bigfoot being kidnapped by aliens. Ghosts come along for the ride. We're going to be raw, going to be raunchy.
That does mean we're going to talk about anal probing, right?
Definitely.
Are we looking for Bigfoot? Guys?
Trivia Geeks, the unpredictable game show podcast, is back with a brand new season. They've got a new host, new games, and a new day and time. But that's not all. Now you can download their companion app, Triv Now, and play along in real time. Watch Carrie on YouTube as she tries to convince her partner that his dark night hasn't risen in years. Listen on Diamond Club and Alpha Geek Radio, Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Twitter and get all the latest updates and showtimes.
Jock and Nerd.
I got to thank Scott Larson for coming in studio. I missed having somebody in the studio because even you fucker, don't even come by anymore.
I know, I
I'm
need
just here
to come
talking
by.
to myself.
Is this the part where I pretend that I've heard this part?
Yes, even though you're not going to hear it until the show posts. Yeah, so just act like you just heard the interview that the listener heard that I was at, that you weren't at, and it was very entertaining.
It was very entertaining. It was weird because I had like a huge boner the entire time.
Oh, that's odd.
Yeah, I don't know if that was the Resurrection Mary helping me out a little bit or what, but
hey, she's a benevolent spirit, I guess.
She's horny as fuck is what she is.
Listen, the one takeaway for the listener, I hope you enjoyed it. I want to ask you a favor. I mentioned this in the conversation, but if you're a new listener who started listening to us maybe in the past year, do me a favor. Check out episode 50, because this goes back to where I first met Scott Larson a year ago exactly. Variety Comics, Chicago's longest running comic book shop, shuts down. I went and Here's why. I did a lot of work to this episode, and it's fucking shitty download numbers.
Lame.
So look, just do me a favor. You don't even have to listen. Just go to jockandnerd.com/50, click the play button. That's it. Just put it on mute. I don't care if you listen. For the amount of work I put into that fucking show, I need a couple of more plays. God damn it. All right, listener? Do me a solid. It's a good show. Now, it is possible that it's just a fucking shitty show, but I don't think so. And so I'm putting it out. This is, I'm going to play this.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
That's what it means to go and listen to episode 50. Thank you very much. Okay.
Who is that guy?
That's the arrested sir. Thanks to Rug Boy.
Yeah, I love that line where this is Democracy Manifest.
All right, and I'll play another good one, and we'll get right into The Walking Dead premiere.
Get your hand off my penis!
Jock and Nerd. All right, well, this is it, folks. You've been waiting for this all summer. They've toyed with our feelings, the producers of The Walking Dead, and we finally got to watch the season 7 premiere of The Walking Dead called The Day Will Come When You Won't Be, and I'm going to issue heavy spoiler alerts right now.
Prepare to be spoiled!
So if you haven't watched it, just stop, come back later, but goddamn, I need to talk about this.
We needed to talk about this now just because waiting till the end of the week is just not gonna work for me either.
No.
Well, I'm not gonna be on the show at the end of the week.
You're not gonna be there.
And you're so eager to talk about this, and you guys will probably recap it later.
Oh yes,
we
will talk. We will also be talking about this on the next episode. But man, I don't know what to feel after watching that. How do you want to start this? You want to recap? Basically, not a lot happens. Tell you the truth.
No, I mean, let's just spoil it right here. We got Abraham was the guy that he's the guy that when they cut at the end of the last season and it was point of view, it was his blood that was running down his face.
He's the one that we were waiting to find out, but they threw us a bonus, a twofer. Oh shit. Motherfucking Glenn
bites the dust just like he did in the comics.
Yes.
Not really.
Yeah, so it's really interesting how they did the issue 100 because they did it, but then they put a twist on it. Even the scene with his eyeball hanging out of his head is right from the comic book pages. Yeah. So this episode starts immediately where the cliffhanger left off.
Right.
And they toy with us for 20 fucking minutes. They toy with us you're there to see the one thing you've been waiting months for all summer. And they fucking toy with you. They show you other clips of other people in Rick's head. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Negan is toying with Rick, playing games with his axe. And this whole time, and this is another thing with the comic book. Well, I won't get into that. We'll get into that later. Because you said I can't mention this stuff on the comic book. But there's a specific reason with the axe and the thing he did with Carl also that is toying in the comic books.
Yeah.
So, look, before they showed us, like, it was pretty tense, but I was pretty annoyed that I was like, what is going on? Just fucking show me. Although I enjoyed Negan's whole process of making Rick his bitch.
You know what? I didn't like that we had to wait. Obviously, we've talked about how we didn't like that they didn't reveal it at the end of last year. And I thought it was just silly that they were doing another 20 minutes.
God, it's so cruel. They're like, fuck it. You waited all summer. We're going to make you wait another 20 minutes, motherfuckers.
Well, I just thought that was dumb. And like the part where like he's having memories of every character and like all the good moments. Like the first time it happened, my roommates, I watched it with my roommates. They're like, oh, that person died. I forgot who was the first person.
It was Rosita. And I wrote it down. I was like, is it Rosita? And then they started showing everybody. And I was like, oh, fuck you guys.
And this is a criticism I read online too, but it was like, Rick doesn't care about all these people equally.
No.
They're not.
Why would he care about Rosita?
I mean, he cares.
Right.
But this isn't someone that he cares about as equal as other. So it's not like he's going to, it was just a cock tease that they didn't really need to, put in there because at that point in that point in the journey, the people that died are already dead.
Yeah.
So why is Rick thinking about every single person in the best moments with them.
That was the show fucking with us.
That's literally the show being like, we're going to stroke your dick a little longer.
There was so many of those things in this episode that really fucking rubbed me the wrong way.
Excuse you?
Not in a good way. Not in a Donald Trump way. I
don't know if we need to recap the entire episode.
No.
Let's just go into our thoughts, because there really, like you said, there wasn't much that happened.
No.
There was a lot of impactful stuff that happened. So the 6 month, we have to address that first.
Okay, let's start
waiting that long. It obviously helped the ratings. I looked at the ratings and they were fantastic.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think there was any doubt that this was going to be a highly rated episode because of the way they set it up.
Right. I do think, though, especially since the comics have come out and we know who dies in the comics.
Yeah.
By the time this episode hit, everyone knew that Glenn was the guy that died in the comics. Like, even if you don't read the comics, you've had so much time.
It got spoiled, yes.
It got spoiled for everybody.
Yeah.
So there's no, and in the comics, I didn't read the comics, but I know that was shocking because it was so unexpected. No one expected that to happen.
Yes, out of nowhere.
Where this build up, you know that someone's going, you're literally waiting for Negan to show up and kill somebody.
Yeah.
So that loses its impact.
It does. It totally loses the suspense. Now, the only way around that was to do the 1-2, because when he did turn around and hit Glenn, I was legitimately like, oh, fuck. Like, I didn't see that coming. But I kind of knew, as much as I tried to stay away from spoilers, I somehow knew that there was going to be 2 big deaths in this episode.
Well, see, here's where I disagree. If they would have, and I read this one online, so this wasn't my idea. But if they would have ended last season's episode with Abraham dying, you show Abraham dying, cut. Then you go to this episode and everyone's like, fuck, Abraham's the guy that died. Glenn's safe. Everybody's safe. Then you start this episode with Daryl punching Negan in the face and Negan being like, this shit ain't gonna fly. And he fucking kills Glenn in this episode. Then I think you create that moment again.
That's interesting. And it's funny how it was kind of Daryl's fault, but ultimately Rick's fault.
Actually, it's Rick's fault.
Yeah. No, but you know what? I kind of agree. My thing was, after I saw this, I really wish this whole episode was the season 6 finale.
Yeah, that would.
I wanted to be left with this. Then you come back and you show me the kingdom. You show me how they're adjusting months after this. Like, Rick is broken down. He made him his bitch. End of the season. Perfect ending. And even this episode was so dragged out. Like, they could have done the season finale and this episode in one episode to end season 6. I'm sick of them fucking dragging this shit out. And it's not for character moments. No. It's just to tease, and it's for shock and for gore. Like, I don't know what's going on. And it almost felt like a completely different show coming back, which is, I don't know if that's kind of a good thing, I think.
I'll admit I was shocked. I literally was like, I didn't see that coming. They got me. I felt like Glenn was safe. I was like, oh, Abraham. He's a cool character, but I guess I could live without Abraham. Bam, Glenn dies.
Fuck.
So in that sense, that like shocked me. So mission accomplished for the show. The stuff with Negan kind of torturing Rick with the axe stuff, that didn't really do anything for me, because I was like, this doesn't make much sense. Like,
yeah. Well, he's trying to break him down.
Yeah, but like, it was like, okay, you're going to teach Rick a lesson, okay, but then what if he dies?
By getting him killed. He doesn't give a fuck. I did love him hanging on the walker.
Hanging on the walker that's a scene that only Walking Dead can pull off.
Yes.
And then let's get to the part where they tease Rick cutting off his son's own arm. I was like, oh, fuck, like, this is going to happen. So that was another very uncomfortable moment that almost played out, and that they tease in the comics with the hand being cut off.
Yeah, so in the comic books, the governor actually cuts Rick's arm off. And so from the beginning, when they were doing that thing with the axe, I was like, oh, shit, are they going to do this? Is Negan going to fucking cut his arm off? And they pull the thing with Carl, and it's a lot like the Bible story about Abraham. You know that story?
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah, Abraham, God tells him to sacrifice his son, and right before he does, he stops him. He's like, okay, you're cool. I was just testing. God, you're a crazy fuck. You were going to do this. That's fine. And that's kind of what, but in Negan's version, he was just breaking him, and the fact that he was going to comply was enough. But I thought Carl didn't seem horrified enough. He was just like, do it already. Like, he should have been
pretty hardened right at this point.
He's hardened, but the look on Rick's face, like, Negan was legit fucking scary. Like, I could not keep my eyes off of him. And just the way Jeffrey Dean Morgan is doing this character, like,
he's playing it well.
He scared the crap out of me. He actually did. I was like, we've never seen this shit before. These people are so fucked.
Right. So in that sense, and it ends, and and they're all crying and taking the bodies away, and they're having that quiet moment. And we can talk about that if you want, but I would say overall the show accomplished two things for me. It surprised the fuck out of me. It made me actually three things. It made me uncomfortable.
Yes.
And at least for me, and I've read a lot of negative reviews online, and I have a positive outlook on this one.
Yeah.
In that it made me want to see Negan get his ass kicked.
But dude, how can they even get retribution from this?
Right.
Like, this was, so I had a couple of issues with the graphic violence. I really did. Like, in certain points I couldn't look. It made me ill. It seemed like torture porn. It seemed like the scares and shocks, they weren't from like character moments. They were just from dragging this out. And it was so fucking graphic. I don't think I've seen anything that graphic aside from Game of Thrones, which I don't watch, but that is like, I think that's separate in the terms of HBO, but that is the fucking most graphic shit I've ever seen. Like, to celebrate this guy's eye hanging out, and like that Lucille is like a toy now. Like, you could buy this thing, but like, it's desensitizing people to violence. It kind of disturbs me. It definitely disturbed me.
It's funny that like AMC like won't let Negan swear, but they will let heads get bashed in on.
That is so much more disturbing and damaging than a word or even nudity. I think, look, that I love the European style of television monitoring. I think they have the right idea. They'll let swears go. They let all the sex and nudity go. There's no violence. Like, and this affects a society. If you are inundated with constant violence and repressed, sexual scenes and censorship, like, that's going to affect the group of people. So I don't know. I mean, it's supposed to be violent, but it's not. The show used to be.
The question is, and I actually talked to two people. One of them was Kevin, who Imran,
yes,
and the other one was Erwin, who you know.
Yes.
And they both said the same thing to me, which I found really interesting. And it was echoed in reviews, but like reviews, I'm like, I don't like give as much credence to, because I'm like, oh, these people are being critical just to be critical.
Right.
But when like people I know say the same thing, and what they said was, this episode was uncomfortable for me to watch. And not that like my favorite character died uncomfortable, but more like, is this kind of just torture porn? Like, this episode is just kind of miserable.
Absolutely right.
Like, this is like those 70, like, this is what I'm saying, but this is like those 70s
grindhouse movies,
like exploitation, like cannibalistic films, where it's just like, there's nothing like this film is here to make you just feel sad.
And no, you're absolutely right. I wasn't disturbed because I had connected with Glenn, the character, which of course I did,
right.
But the way they did this did not elicit that for me. Had you done more of an off-screen kind of implied thing, that would have made me connect with the character. But to just fucking show you,
well, that they're showing you, and then you got Negan kind of like being like evil guy, like, oh, are you trying to say something, buddy?
Oh my God.
Are you? Like, what are you saying?
I was ill. I was ill. Like, I was.
And then you have Glenn like muttering words as he's like,
oh my God. I'm like, this is wrong. This is too much. Did they cross a line?
Well, they did. Let's think about this. You did Abraham. You had Glenn. Then remember how you talked about how they shot all that footage?
Yeah, they showed you those.
They used it.
Yes, they like imagine the other. Like, was that necessary? What the fuck are you doing?
That was necessary. I didn't think it was necessary to start showing everybody getting their brain smashed in.
Like, it's
Like you're showing women, and then you're showing even Carl. Like you're showing a child getting his head. Like, I mean, it's not as explicit, but you definitely see the bat and blood splatter off of each face.
Unnecessary. Like this is what
and then,
you call.
And then you end the episode with a guy almost cutting his son's arm off.
This is what you call trolling your audience.
So is that cross a line into almost torture porn-esque?
Yes. Yeah. Unnecessary. And I'm going to blame. We've taught. Okay, couple of things. The conversations we used to have with Do Right that were so awesome, always revolved around the characters and the decisions and the morals of it. This episode removes all of that. Like, you can't talk about that. It's not what the show used to be about. And I'm going to go back and mention when Frank Darabont left as showrunner and Scott Gimple started, that I think that's one of the problems. Scott Gimple is fucking with the viewers because they can't, I don't know why, they can't write good characters anymore. They're just going for shock after shock.
Well, what this episode did, granted, I enjoy me a good revenge plot line as much as anybody, but this show kind of used to be about like them finding their way and like learning with each other and finding out how to live in this new world and like develop things and like become a society again. That's not the case anymore. This is
a whole different show.
Well, at least for this season, as of right now, it's just a revenge storyline. It's like, how the fuck are they going to get back at Negan? Which, you can use that for a movie, maybe like 2.5 hours. I don't know how you're going to plot that out over 13 hours.
But think about it. Even in the best scenario, if Maggie kills Negan.
Maggie has to, right?
I would think so, but I still don't think they're even.
Well, that's actually what Kevin said to me. He goes, let's say Negan, they're eventually going to kill Negan, probably, right? Or that maybe. Well, who knows? Comics say no.
Yeah.
But let's say they get Negan's comeuppance. Is that even like, if that was your situation, there's no way you can even, it's never going to be the same. Like,
no,
you're forever broken because of that situation.
He made Rick his bitch, dude. What are you going to do? You have to work for him. Like,
well, I'm saying too, like, revenge isn't going to be enough.
No,
like,
it's not.
It was so.
I mean, it was
dramatic.
Look, I'll give him credit in the sense that it was devastating as a viewer. Like, this was fucking devastating. And yeah, the show has to make you uncomfortable, but they're not doing it the right way. They're not doing it to serve character or story. They're doing it just to be shocking.
Right.
I don't think I like that. Now, that article you shared today was very good from The Verge. They have a little series called The Walking Dead Quitters Club, where I guess every episode they're like, is this the episode they would quit? Have they gone too far? And the guy at the end goes, yep, this is it. This is the one. We're done with this show. I'm just going to quote the very last thing Brian says in this thing, and he kind of puts it perfectly. He says, last night we watched a sociopathic exhibition of brutality, all in a blatant attempt to elicit cries of fealty and submission. But the perpetrator wasn't Negan. It was The Walking Dead. And they were like, I'm curious to see if a lot of people are going to be done with this show after this.
I read that there was an article, I think it was on, it might have been IO9. I think it was actually Birth Movie's Death. But there was an article, and this Walking Dead is one of the main catalysts for this, is there used to be TV shows used to have, like Breaking Bad, I think they listed as a good example, of shows where each episode was kind of its self-contained story.
Yeah.
But the plot moved forward, or you learned more about a character, or, you could watch each episode on its own weekly and be satisfied. But now with like the Netflix stuff, especially from Marvel, but they listed Walking Dead as one of the main things for this, is that instead of going for self-contained stories, they're catering more to the binge-watching audience. And the binge-watching audience, all they care about is something shocked me, I have to see what happens next. Something shocked me, I have to see what happens.
Cliffhanger,
next.
Set up cliffhanger next.
Set up cliffhanger, shock me, big reveal, shock me. Like, it's always like end of the episode, what's going to happen next, or something big happened, fuck, I got to know what happens next.
So they're afraid to almost give some kind of closure per episode.
Well, it's that, and I think it's laziness in writing. It's that it's not thinking about how can we stretch the story over 13 episodes and make each episode build on something. It's more, we got to fill this episode. We got to fill this episode. Like this one, like we just said, not much really
Nothing happens. There's no character development of anyone but Negan.
Well, and if you think about it, all of last season they built towards Negan.
Yes,
so it
and
took
it was
a whole season to get
annoying.
to Negan. And then you knew that Negan was there to kill someone. So then you waited another 6 months to get that part. And in this episodes, they waited another 20 minutes before the episode where they reveal who killed reveal who Negan killed. And then lastly, you had the entire last episode of last season, the last 10, 15 minutes where Negan monologued and said he was the bad guy. Basically showed you why he's the bad guy.
Imagine someone telling you a story like that. I would smack that fucker in the face.
Well, you had that all of the last episode of last season. Then you get to this episode, and guess what? You got a whole nother episode of Negan telling you why he's a bad guy. So they're really dragging shit out.
It's annoying. It's annoying when the last season started with a nice jump and there was things moving. But if this is the direction that they're heading in, I don't know. I mean, I want to see what happens at the Kingdom, but man, really? This is what you're doing now? Like, this was cheap. It was cheap.
I don't know if there's any correlation to maybe it just being last season or maybe just a symptom of my viewing habits. But when I binge watched this, I loved it.
Yeah, the whole season.
Not this season. But I'm saying everything. You know, remember when I caught up?
Yes.
I binge watch. I couldn't get enough.
But the week to week kind of got frustrating.
Week to week has made me frustrated. So I don't know if it's because last season they started jumping the shark a little bit on shock factor and spinning its wheels, or if it's the fact that the show just doesn't hold up week to week. I think it's a combination of both. I think last season, and my friend Erwin, who's been on the show, agreed. Last season, which was season 6 or 7 or whatever, is when they really started having these episodes where they were just staying in neutral and grinding their fucking gears in the same parked car.
I mean, think about the season
They should have never done the Glenn fake out.
Glenn fake out. The whole season finale, where it's an hour and a half, and they're just driving around getting blocked. Like, you could have done all of this episode, last episode, in one episode, and left us devastated for the summer. And I would have been dying to come back and see.
Let me ask you a question, because you're a reader of the comics.
Yes.
And I saw this proposed online.
Yes. Did
we need to see Glenn die like that? And let me preface this by saying, yes, he died like this in the comics, sort of. It was more shocking because it was the first time and whatever. But I've seen an argument online that his death when they did the fake out was a lot more noble and a lot better death because he's with the guy that he betrayed him and he's still showing a good heart, and he dies in this death where there's music and like he's dying going out a hero.
I'll agree.
Whereas this death
is arbitrary and random.
It was shock factor and torture porn.
Yep. It's cheap. It's cheap. And and look, the book is kind of like this, but like you just said, they didn't tease you with the fake out death, and it was shocking because it was the first time, I don't know, where our main character, you meet this guy, and in the same issue, he fucking bashes Glenn's brains in. You're like, what the fuck? So Negan is established, one issue. Like, that's what they needed to do, not talk about him. He should have just shown up, fuck things up, and then I'm out. And you'd be like, what the fuck just happened?
And I forgot, too, in the one episode where Rick, who's an idiot, infiltrates Negan's base without any preparation and kills all those people.
This is all his fault.
Right, kills all those people. You got Polaroids of people's heads bashed.
Yeah, constantly.
So they've been teasing
this
for a while. And what sucks about the way they wrote Rick because of that episode is this, like you just said, is actually all Rick's fault. If you think about it from Negan's perspective,
I would be pissed at him too.
He's going pretty easy. You just killed 20, 30 of his men
he just
unprovoked.
Took out 2 of yours.
Yeah, you did it unprovoked. You literally came in the middle of the night and assaulted all of his men.
Who's the bad guy here?
So you don't expect anything to happen?
No, Rick's an idiot.
Right.
But they've never met somebody like this. But they should have known somebody.
But they went in. They went in hastily. They didn't do any prep.
Yes, no.
They didn't realize that this group of people. They went off of the Hilltoppers. What they said. They didn't realize that this group of people had a fucking army.
Yeah.
They didn't do any recon. Nothing. They literally went in there and killed. Cold blood murdered a lot of people.
Also, is Maggie and Sasha walking to the hilltop now?
Yeah, that doesn't make fucking sense.
What the fuck are you doing? You're gonna get killed.
Well, that and like the whole reason why they're out there is because Maggie got sick
Yeah.
And they were like, we need our whole crew out here to protect her because she's sick.
I did kind of like how she was the one. She's like, we have to fight them. And Rick's like, I
did enjoy that. I did enjoy that Maggie's like got the resolve to be like, we still got to kill these motherfuckers.
She's badass potential in there.
I mean, even though it was torture porn, I did like that Negan was like, I'm going to stamp this not today, not tomorrow bullshit out of you.
Yeah.
Like, you better fucking fear me. You still look at me like you're going to kill me. No way.
No, I mean, look, everything Jeffrey Dean Morgan did was fantastic. Like I said, I was transfixed. I was like, this motherfucker is scary. You don't know what he's going to do. And you know, he doesn't fuck around. Like, he made that clear. And I did love, then he was like, that's the look. All right, we're good now. That's the look. I was like, God damn. But when he's bashing their heads in, I was like, oh my God, is this really necessary? Like the squishing and the fuck. And then it just disturbs me that people are like glorifying his weapon to the point where it's like an icon. It's a Twitter emoji.
Oh, shit.
This violent weapon is a fucking Twitter emoji that everyone is like worshiping. I don't know what the fuck.
If I'm not incorrect, I think Talking Dead did a premiere and they screened it on a cemetery.
Yes, they watched it in Hollywood Cemetery. And they showed the reactions of people screaming, and the whole cast was there, and it was raining. I watched that whole fucking shit show. But I don't know.
And if like it'd be one thing if the show was kind of like tongue in cheek, like kind of like Ash versus Evil Dead.
Oh, it's
like
funny. Okay, go ahead. It's funny you mentioned that. Go ahead.
Like that kind of, then you can get away with that violence, but as noticed by the Talking Dead, they're taking this seriously because they did these they did these tributes as if these people were real people.
Every time it's weird, dude. Okay, so right before I watched that episode, I watched the latest episode of Ash versus Evil Dead, waiting for The Walking Dead, and in that episode, like this B-movie horror, his car gets possessed, drives over his dad's head, and pretty much pops half of it off to where he's holding his brains and trying to put it back in the skull, and he goes, has anybody seen another eyeball around here? Like, it's hilarious, and it's campy violence, and it worked perfectly. So I went from that to watching this very serious snuff film almost.
Yeah, it was.
And it disturbed the shit out of me.
Well,
because I couldn't reconcile those two things.
Did it disturb you enough where it's like, I guess what their goal was is obviously to shock you, but did it disturb you enough to be like, all right, Negan's a motherfucker. How are they going to get after him?
Yes.
So then if that's the case, then isn't that mission accomplished?
Well, it also almost disturbed me to the point where I was like, I don't know if I can watch this show anymore. I don't agree with what they're doing.
Yeah, that's the line that I think a lot of people are on.
I'm right on that. I'm right on the ledge of that line now. Because it was, I don't know, I'm not trying to be like, a conservative or a prude, but it was borderline fucking offensive. Like, it was so fucking graphic. I mean, I kind of knew what I was getting into, and it's The Walking Dead, but the zombie gore is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
This, with living people, it's another thing.
Well, the thing, too, about Glenn's death is, first off, it cheapens Abraham's death.
Yes. Yeah, fuck Abraham. Who cares?
Second, like, Glenn dying in and of itself is a sad moment. Like, Glenn doesn't get to see his unborn child. Doesn't fucking, him and Maggie are together. But it almost was like that, all that crap was kind of washed away just because his death was so brutal that you were like, wait, he has a child. Like, you're not even thinking about that. You're just like, he's just getting brutally mashed.
I just brought back when Everybody Hates Chris died in the revolving door.
Yeah, I remember that was someone asked me, is this the most brutal episode? And I said, there's only one other episode I can think of.
Yes,
that's when Everybody Hates Chris gets his face bitten off.
But this is 100 times worse.
Well, yes,
100 times worse.
Yeah, because it's human on human.
Yes, it's really fucked up people.
You know what I thought was a really strange thing too is when Negan was taunting Rick and going, I bet you thought you guys were all going to be sitting around at a picnic table.
The Sunday dinner.
And I was like, no, Rick's seen his wife die.
Yeah.
He's seen his girlfriend die. He's seen children die. He's seen a lot of people that he's cared about. His best friend die.
And this show...
I don't think Rick is anticipating that he's going to live. I think he's pretty used to death.
And it was silly to show the Sunday dinner picnic table.
That was weird.
Now one of those fuckers thinks that's for their fucking life. You know what's funny? There's only 4 people left from the first season of the initial group.
Well, someone pointed out online, they were like, okay, let's say they do have dinner like this, like they ended up growing old together.
Yeah.
There's still going to be zombies.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, this is funny. They're like, I saw fucking napkin holders out there.
I know. What was this fucking kitchen picnic spread?
When would they have time to be like, you know what? We're done with the essentials.
Oh, it was such
we need
bullshit.
some fucking napkin holders.
Everyone
in
is
here.
clean and it was so.
But I mean, what they were trying to do was linger on Glenn's son and be like, Glenn never had this moment with his son.
Just drive the fucking knife in deeper.
But it was handled so weirdly.
Didn't work.
Yeah,
It didn't work.
Because like Ick said, Rick is not anticipating a long life with these people.
No.
He's desensitized to death. He knows that more people are probably going to die. I don't know. That was weird. That was strange. Strange choice in the episode. It was another layer of let's just make this as miserable as possible.
And that's, I mean, if that was the goal of what they're doing, then they achieved that. But I don't like this cheap value. It needs to go back to character motivation, character development, and not just fucking cheap gore.
I have a little bit more in me, but I even said this when we did our Walking Dead marathon review when I finally caught up. I said, I just want to see Rick happy. And you said to me, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So the whole goal of this show is to make you miserable. And at the end of the day, if this show continually just pulls a rug out from you and makes you miserable, then actually how enjoyable is that?
Isn't that
to always be like, you know what? He's never going to have his day. It's going to be sad. Like, this isn't like Peter Parker. No. Oh, shucks. He's never going to have the girl. This is more like
there's no hope
for you.
Yes.
So what's the point of watching then?
Because
that's the thing.
We're going to get a tiger and a guy with white dreadlocks called Ezekiel. And what if
the kingdom's going to come?
What if Carol and what's his face been doing? Morgan.
I am curious about the kingdom.
But oh man, this episode was fucked up. It was just
that was a rough one.
It's got my head in a tizzy, and I don't know if I like it or hate it. It could be like the best episode. I don't know.
I think it's going to be an episode that people talk about for a long time, not only because of what happened, but because of the buildup of last season. So it got people talking for sure.
But in the cheapest, most lowest denominator way.
Right. And I think
they're better than that.
They're at the point where they're in 7 seasons too. So
here's something I haven't said on the show in many episodes. Fuck you, make it better. Oh shit.
Yeah, I mean,
and like this was one of my favorite shows on television.
Yeah, you're a little bit more sour on it than me for sure. I was initially at the end of the episode, I was like, "Wow, that was crazy. I want to see Negan get his ass kicked. How are they going to figure this out?" That was my initial thought. So I was a lot more positive on it. Yeah. But after reading reviews and hearing like people that are fans be like, "God, that was miserable." Like I'm seeing why this could be miserable, and I'm agreeing with a lot of it.
Like it made me feel weird in my skin, kind of uncomfortable. Like if that was the goal, then congratulations. But I don't know if I enjoyed that. I was just like, whoa, what the fuck just happened?
What sucks about this one, if you agree that last season spun its wheels, is this episode itself spun its wheels.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like fucking barely anything happened. It's the same night. We've been in the same night for like so long.
Yeah, we're literally in the same night. And funny fact, whoever the fuck's playing Carl is like so much taller.
He got really big. Yeah, he got really tall.
And I was thinking about like the first season when he was a little kid, and I'm like,
he's gonna be a grown ass man by the end of the season.
I feel like only like 2 years has passed in Walking Dead, and he's grown. He's gone 7 years, obviously.
I mean, the show wants to go on for 10 years. We'll see how they play out the rest of this episode.
Didn't they say that? I mean, the writers are like, this is the show that just will never end, right? Or he's like, you could write this comic forever.
And in a way, like it's kind of a reset. I did feel it as kind of a reset. Like I was like, this is a different show. This is a different situation. Like everything starts here. You're down 2 guys, and everything just starts now under this regime.
Well, I would like to see the show get more into like clan warfare,
maybe class warfare, or
like
communities fighting.
Yeah, like armies and stuff.
Yeah, like medieval type shit.
Yeah, like this is our section of the the yard. And
turf warfare would be awesome.
Turf warfare, like almost like country relations, like foreign relations. It's up at smaller scale with like maybe the Kingdom and Alexandria and Negan's group.
You still have this whole other group called the Whisperers, which are awesome also, that he hasn't even touched yet in the show. So
there's still more material to be mined. But
rough.
This one was whatever material they mined stuff from the comics, and this one was particularly difficult for some people.
Well, listener, let us know what you thought. I would love to know what your thoughts are on this. You just visit jockandnerd.com/contact. There's a bunch of ways to contact us. Are you going to continue? Did this episode make you vomit? Or were you just like, so what? This is also possible.
Which is possible.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm just surprised that the stuff they get away with on AMC, but they don't do swearing.
They should just look, if you're going to show that, just let Negan say fuck all the time. What's the harm? It's less disturbing.
Did you like Jeffrey Dean Morgan?
Oh, I love him. He's doing a great job. Like the character, the writing I thought was good. The way he's doing it is he's tall, but he's kind of skinny, but boy, is he scary.
He's definitely scary. I like his performance. I've read some stuff online where he's basically one note right now.
Yeah.
He's just evil to be evil.
Well, but it's a great
He's
note.
sadistic evil, but he's hamming it up.
He's juicing the shit out of it. I mean, he makes the governor look like fucking Martha Stewart.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and I am kind of interested to see some more layers, and he probably has layers. Will we find out his backstory? What was he doing this whole time? He's got a lot of layers in the comic book, but it's always very manipulative. There's always goals. He's always playing people. But you don't know who he's playing. You don't know if he's telling the truth. It's very interesting.
I'd be curious to learn about him. I'd be curious to learn about how a guy becomes that powerful.
There is, I think they put out an issue of his backstory over the summer, which basically fills in what he went through.
Okay.
And if you want to find out, you can read that. Something about his wife had cancer. She died, blah, blah, blah. They're both kind of like Rick in the hospital, but he was there with his wife. So he's had some loss and shit.
I'd rather not. I'd rather him not be someone that you could have related to.
Yes.
I'd rather him just have been.
It's like humanizing Thanos.
Yeah, I don't want him to be human. I want him to be this guy that was just insane from the get-go.
Yeah. He's just evil because he is. That's how he was made. Right. All right. Well, good stuff, man. I'm sure. I can't wait to find out what Rug Boy thinks. I think he liked it. So we'll find out next episode.
I'm surprised.
Yeah. And I mean, I liked it, but I had issues. But it's starting to make me angry. So, all right. Before we wrap up this Halloween episode, I got one little announcement. Well, it's kind of a big announcement. Listener, if you are a regular listener, you may have heard me mention that I was a guest on a trivia podcast a while ago. It's called Trivia Geeks, put out by the Blazing Caribou Studios. And I was on there as a guest, and we had a lot of fun. And recently they had me fill in as a host because they had a host out, and then they were like, you want to do it? And I was like, sure. Well, that episode actually posts the day this episode will post, so I'll put a link in the show notes. They like me so much, they want me to be a regular co-host.
Oh shit!
On Trivia Geeks.
Are you ditching me, you son
no,
of a bitch?
No. Look, this will not affect this show.
God knows I can't produce this show on my own.
I know you don't have a computer or the recorder or any of the.
I ain't got shit.
He's got the microphone. Look, it's not going to affect this show. But all I do is I'm giving them an hour on Wednesdays. I don't even have to prepare anything. This is the beauty of going on other podcasts. I just show up, be my usual jackass self, and then hit the road. And they're rebranding their podcast. The artwork, I provided the artwork. I helped them with a couple of graphics. So new Trivia Geeks, it's live at Blazing Caribou Studios. I will put links in the show notes to this episode, jockandnerd.com/135. And I'm excited to be part of this. Dude, these guys, they have a team of like 50 people all working volunteer on like 13 shows. Like nobody's paid. Everyone is just volunteering their time, and everything from like writers to producers to hosts to editors. It's pretty fun. Like I love the spirit of what they're doing. And I just look, anytime I can get on mic and make an ass of myself, I'm going to jump. I'm going to jump on that. So look out for that. The first episode of the new Trivia Geeks is out now.
Check it out.
And, well, that's about it. Anthony, I wish you good luck in this next week. I probably won't see you.
No, you probably, I mean, you'll see me because we work together.
Yeah.
And you might hear from me, but unfortunately, guys, I can't be on the weekly show because
it's just, look, this will all be over in a week.
Once in a lifetime. It'll be over in a week, and we'll be back to normal, regularly scheduled programming. I'll maybe catch up on a show or two so that I can actually talk about things.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. I'm like 2 weeks behind on S.H.I.E.L.D. and 1 week behind on everything else.
We have plenty of time to catch up. Listener, we'd appreciate it if you visit our iTunes page at jockandnerd.com/review. Leave us a rating and reviewing. It tingles me in all the right places. Geek boner.
Some would say the feels.
It gives me all the feels.
Yes. I see that you know your judo well.
Good for you for knowing your judo. And also, tell a friend, spread the geekery, spread the stupidity. Thanks for listening. This has been the Jock and Nerd Podcast. My name is Imran.
My name's Anthony.
He's the Jock.
He's the nerd.
Hey, we'll hear you next time.